going to be kind of a long video because I tried to do this yesterday, broken up, but I got to do this more in line to be correct because it's a very important video, and it's about what the title says: how our own government is committing acts of treason in aiding and assisting our long known and established enemies of the United States that are now infiltrating our nation and positioning for an attempted overthrow from within. This is a fact, people, and it's a fact that's hard for many people to face, and clearly our own government, for the majority, is in denial of, but it's going on. And by the end of this, I think everybody's going to realize that it's going on. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that trip down history and take a look at everything that's happening. We're going to start with here talking about Islam. Now, with Islam, it's kind of a touchy situation and has been in our nation now for quite a while. As we know, it's something that's come to light since, well, people became aware of the attack starting to take place in America back in 1993 with the first World Trade Center attack. Prior to that, we had many wars and stuff, but nobody was paying attention to who it was with. But the whole trend of it all, going back as far as our nation's founding time, has been with the same exact people. Matter of fact, most of the world, by the end of this video, you're going to realize, most of the world situation of wars and issues that we face today all stem back to this very same issue that today we're still facing. So let's take a look at Islam and understand. I'm going to tell you what I know about Islam, and then people can do their own due diligence if they want to question my personal knowledge of it. But Muhammad was said to be prophet of the Nation of Islam, and we're going back to a point of around 640 AD, about 640 years 650 years after Jesus Christ came, and you had the rise of this man who was an Arab, illiterate warmonger, is pretty much what he was. The history says that he was pretty much courted in with a wealthy woman at the time in Arabia, and it's said that it's believed to be said that he was having visions and seeing things and became a prophet, and then people started following him. But the truth of the matter was that what he did was he used to listen to men preach, of the Jews and as well the Christians, and he became knowledgeable of their preaching in that sense of listening. And he tried to form his own ideology of a theology of what his thought pattern was. And he tried to be inclusive. He tried to include, at first anyway, he tried to include the Jewish people, and he tried to include the Christians. He tried to make an all-inclusive kind of religion and make himself the head of that religion. And this was in Mecca, what they call Mecca today, Medina. And he was thrown out of there after a while as being pretty much mocked to be a crazy man. He had people who were following him, and eventually they caught on to him that he was a scam artist, and some of them left him and exposed him. And then what he did when he was thrown out of Mecca, he had gone out to start hanging out in the areas of the outskirts there to where he was thrown out to, which is along the desert borders around Mecca. And out there was known at the time as desert-dwelling bastards. These were the criminal element who were all outcasts from the major cities around that area. And they were like desert pirates who would raid caravans, kill the men, rape the women, take the children as sex slaves and what have you, just sick, demented people who were desert criminals, known as desert pirates. And they referred to them back then, in the interpretations from my understanding, as the desert-dwelling bastards. This is who Muhammad wound up going and hanging with. After a while, it appears, of hanging with these men, he was able to corral them into a point of following him himself, and he became a leader of these men. And they came back into Mecca, and this is where Muhammad came back in with vengeance. And he became a warmonger. He started pretty much killing people who were against him or mocked him or laughed at him or condemned his teachings. At the beginnings, there's many of the writings they say existed of what Muhammad was saying that was written by his scribes, of which several of his scribes had left him after realizing he was a fake, a shyster, and they had converted over back to Christianity and left him, or went to Judaism or whatever their prior ideology was of following and faith. They left him after realizing he was a scam artist. He had those killed, and they were called apostates. And he waged a long battle of war, and then warring on people and pretty much terrorizing people. The man was they would go into villages, raid them, kill the men, take the women and children as sex slaves. We know that the man was a pedophile. He had taken a wife at the age of like 6 years old, and he consummated the marriage with this child when she was 9 years old. And these are the practices of Islam that all Muslims now follow. They replicate what this man did, and everything he did is considered acceptable to the barbaric ways of beheading people, dismembering people, hanging people, burning people alive, killing people, child molestation. Today, in the Islamic nations, they are still following that of a culture that dates back 1,400 years. They're not, today, like here in the West, in America, we assume everyone in the world is like us, but it's a big mistake to assume these things, because we don't realize that outside around us of the United States of America, the governing authorities in the world are that of either monarchies, totalitarianism, communism, dictatorship, or supreme rulers, like you have in North Korea. And the world in that state with those people are pretty much similar to what they've always been in ancient times. They're deprived of proper education, like for instance in North Korea, as well as the majority of the Islamic states. These people are not allowed to learn of like modern history of what we are free to learn here in the United States. Here in America, we're free to go to libraries and study whatever we want. Freedom of information is here. You have other states, nations that are like that are similar to ours, that have advanced with evolution and technologies and things like that, like Canada, Australia, Germany, some of the UK. But the Islamic states are not with that. The people there, it's a totalitarian regime. The Islamic Muslims, as like in the founding time, control every aspect of these people's lives. From what they can read and learn, to how they will dress, what they will eat, how they will marry, when they will pray, who they will pray to, what their religion will be, what kind of clothes they will wear, when they will live and when they will die, actually, is all determined by that of the Islamic rulers, of the monarchy families now. The monarchies of what was Saudi Arabia, Iran, and known as the Egyptian nations over there have all become now the Islamic leaders of Islam. And those royal families are now the governing authorities as monarchies under the authority of self-appointed by that of the authority of their God called Allah. Islam is not really a religion of that of any true God. I don't say that in opinion, I say that by the facts of reading the Quran itself. When one reads the Quran, you understand that the God Allah is a fake God, because the God Allah has so many errors in there about the world and how it functions and how the universe functions and what have you, that it becomes self-evident that this man was not receiving revelations from any true God. Because if he was, God would not have made so many mistakes. If God is truly God, and God knows how he made the universe, Allah is not God, because Allah does not know how the universe was made. According to Allah, in long-standing 1,400 years of Islamic teachings, Allah had made the earth flat. The sun sets in a muddy puddle under the flat earth. The earth is fixed and does not move. It's fixed upon the back of a large fish or a whale that swims through infinity. With 7 earths below our earth of the same and 7 heavens above, and the whale is, I guess, we're on the back of the fish, and it doesn't really make much sense. I know it sounds a little bit crazy, and but this is the way that it says Allah made the universe. The earth is fixed, and the moon and the sun kind of teeter-totter like this. The moon sets, and then the sun rises, then the sun sets in a muddy puddle under, and then the moon rises. This is what it says. So when you're looking at these things and you understand the advancements in technology today, we realize that, well, if Allah was God, Allah was either God, we would have to say God is not perfect, and God forgot how he made the universe, because Allah has no idea how the universe was made. What's further reading and study of the Quran, you realize that really it's plagiarism. What they did was they stole the history of the prophets of the Jewish faith, of the canons of the Jews, and they stole the ideology of that of Christianity from the Christians, and they tried to again make it inclusive. But in the second writing of, you see, there's 2 Quran versions. One's an abrogated Quran, which there's no telling which one is abrogated or which one isn't abrogated. because of what they call tiaka, which is the Islamic ability to lie. And they do this for the purpose of deceiving people, so no one understands the agenda or the truth or the secrets of what they claim to be of Islam. They won't really reveal what of it is true and what's not. They abrogate it, though, from those who were Muslims and have studied Islam as Muslims and then became awakened themselves to the reality of which, as we go through this, you're going to meet several of those people who awoke into the reality of the lies of Islam and its totalitarian ideology of totalitarianism, pretty much, and how fake it is. And they expose it themselves as former Muslims. Some who are actually in line of royalty who had left Islam and are exposing the truth this day and are very active in the world right now, trying to wake up not only America but the world around America to the truth and the dangers of Islam and the lies of Islam. And as we progress forward, we're going to see those things and we're going to become aware of those things. And then we're going to also look at how our own American United States government, within for the majority that of the Democratic Party, and the complicity exists with that of the Republican Party, in their acts of treason that have directly now today are the direct cause of near 5,000 Americans being killed right here on our own home ground, in their complicit acts of knowing and committing treason and aiding and assisting the known and long established declared enemies of the United States, who are the Islamic Muslims of the Quran we're speaking of. Now, the Muslims, in their thing, we have here, which I mentioned earlier, that in the first part of Islam, where Muhammad, the so-called prophet, attempts to establish his ideology, he gets caught on to by certain people, of which this person here is one. I can't really say the name or speak in Arabic, but the interpretations here was of one guy who realized a short, brief story on it. He was suggesting to Muhammad to say this or say that, or maybe it means this or that. And Muhammad agreed and said, yeah, you know what, write what you want. And this guy realized that if he was able to prophesize and say things and it was supposedly of God, how could that possibly be if he's the prophet and not this guy? So this guy realized that Muhammad really didn't care what anybody was putting down or saying about it. This guy left and went and became a Christian. And he was one of the first apostates, as they call him. And then as I put here, the Prophet Muhammad, the origins of Islam, as they started, like I said back then, with this guy who claimed that he was a prophet and he was having visions by God. Eventually, though, as we see the progression of him, the theories of the Quran, too, have been changing dramatically. They try to indoctrinate that of their own people, that the Quran is a perfect, never-changing book, but that's not true. There's many verses of the Quran, and throughout its history and finding out its mistakes, there's a lot of effort put in to try and correct the mistakes, to try and make it look perfect. But there's so many mistakes in such a long history of its teachings, it's pretty hard to hide what they're doing and what's been done. Like, for instance, right now, the things I mentioned about that Allah says the earth is flat, the sun sets in a muddy puddle underneath the earth. There are 7 earths below this earth that are identical and 7 heavens above. Allah rests in the top of the heaven up there. He throws the shooting stars to hit demons. I mean, just, where we get the Atlantic and fantasy movies out of Hollywood from is pretty much from the Quran. And flying carpets and what have you, flying donkeys and things as such, are all out of the Quran with them. And at the time when the Quran was being written, in truth, Muhammad, the funny thing about it is Muhammad was a war prophet. He was a warmonger. He waged war and forced people to convert to his way of ideology by pretty much threat of death and terrorism, by beheading people. They would attack a village and kill the people until they submitted. They would take the women and children as sex slaves and kill the men or enslave the men as well, or force them to convert and become followers of Muhammad. And this is how it went. But in truth, this campaign waged on until Muhammad died. And then the Quran was actually not even really written until near 150 years after Muhammad died. And then supposedly some Arabs came up with the idea that they had memorized, or somebody had memorized and verbally shared this secret text of the Quran now for the last 150 years, and they were going to finally write it down, and this was going to be the new holy book of a new ideology that would emerge onto the world and be called Islam. So that's how it came about. And now in that trend of that point there, I'll include links here so people can look in the military career of Muhammad. speaks about pretty much that's what it was. He was not a prophet. He was a military warmonger is what he was. He waged war on anybody who spoke out against him. He was a madman, a pedophile, a rapist, a murderer, and just a sick warmonger. And he waged war up until he died. After he died, like I say, 150, it's near 150 years. We'll look it up real quick and just take a look. I don't have anything up on it. I thought I did. We'll take a quick look. I don't want to be wrong. Okay, so it was actually 120 years after Muhammad died. So I just want to be right, because I know if Muslims see this, they'll look for any error or any mistake I possibly can make in a date, even by a day, and it'll be the cause of all fallacy of everything I say. So I just wanted to make sure. It says here that the Prophet Muhammad died in 632 CE. The earliest materials on his life that we possess was written in 750 CE, in other words, 120 years after Muhammad's death. So I just want to make sure that was clear, that we understand that. And we're going to get back on track to what we're talking about. Now, the issues with this thing was, like, we look at things like today. Today, we are all in America become aware of Islam. My history of understanding Islam goes back to the mid-'70s, and where I started to learn about this culture and ideology in relation to street gangs in the city of Newark, where I grew up as a young kid, called the 5%er Nation of Islam. And that was rising from that of the American-founded Nation of Islam here in America that started in 1934 under a man named Elijah Muhammad. And actually, prior to Elijah Muhammad, was a man named Fard. And he was a white Arab who came over here and came up with the idea of this, collaborating, believe it or not, at the time with FDR of 1934 of the Democratic Party. If you look into truth under Hoover, the FBI investigations that took place in that time, you'll find that there's a large FBI file in relation to the Nation of Islam developing here in America under the man named Fard, and as well Elijah Muhammad. And what the attempt or the goal was at that time was to break up the allegiance, to develop some kind of ideology for the black Americans in our nation to follow that would divide them from the white Republicans, because at that time there was a strong unity between white and black Republicans that was unbreachable. And in that time there was no black Democrats, because they all understood that the Democratic Party was the founders of the Confederate slave states and who fought to try and keep them enslaved, and they weren't so ignorant as what they are today. But just to touch on that real quick, is where the Nation of Islam came into America. This speaks a little bit on the abrogated verses of the Quran, is what I was speaking about. And these are the things that are important for us to understand. When we hear today people speaking about Islam, I later on in life took a long, I guess you could say, 2-year study into this in depth. I love Jesus Christ. I'm an American Christian. I don't like to call or define anything like Catholicism, Christianism, whatever, Methodist, Protestant. I don't care for a religious title. I follow the teachings of my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, who is God. He was God manifested in the flesh here on earth. I don't question those things from the facts of history and things I've learned. That would be another video. But and then I believe in that true universal one God of God Almighty. So and I don't believe Islam has anything to do with that God, though they try to say they are of the Jewish faith and the Christian faith. They try to tie themselves in a co-existing way with Judaism and Christianity. But in truth, like I said, when you read the Quran, you realize that Allah, this as the one they call God, is not the same God of I Am, or the God Jehovah, or Jesus Christ. He's not God of the Hebrews. He's not the God of the Christians. He's a fake made-up God, because he doesn't even know how the world works. And this is just a fact that is the way it is. But the thing of it is that with the abrogated Quran now, in the beginning, before Muhammad was cast out of Mecca, the teachings, when you read the Quran, you understand that they kept the things the way they were, and it's a confounding book. It's not very big, but it is confounding and twisted. The teachings that they have under what they call tiaka, which is a method of being able to deceive, the things that are abrogated, that no longer apply because he became mad at everybody for throwing him out of Mecca. Then he came back with a vengeance and started killing everybody who mocked him and didn't agree with him and wouldn't convert to his ideology. And then he abrogated everything he said prior of anything kind. At this point, in the second coming of where he comes back out of the desert with his warmonger army, he now changes things and becomes the warmonger, and it becomes an ideology of punishment for everybody who ridiculed him, condemned him, and wouldn't convert with him. And pretty much, though, they keep, though, the old now. In the beginning, he tried to, like, be coexisting. So now they'll use the old abrogated statements, and they don't tell you how they apply. For instance, in anywhere in the Quran or anything in the Islamic teachings, when they say, like, I'm just going to hypothetically state a thing here. If they were to say that, peace upon all people and grace and mercy by God on all people, and all people are to be protected and what have you, understand that in their teachings, they understand when they say such things, it's only inclusive to that of Muslims. That does not extend beyond anything but a Muslim. So anything of compassion, kindness, mercy, gifting, or anything does not apply to anything but a Muslim in the true Islamic teachings, not in the abrogated. The abrogated fools people, and it's used for that. It's used to present that of what would appear to be a peaceful ideology similar to that. It speaks of Jesus, it speaks of the Jews, it speaks of them as the people of the book. But as we progress forward, you're going to understand how these lying methods work, and we're going to reveal these things so everybody has a good understanding. My point now, and as you see in the title of this, is about the treason being committed by the United States government, of which I'm witness to right now. And believe it or not, anyone who has seen the things and is aware of the things that I'm stating throughout this video are as well. They say you need to have several witnesses for treason. We have thousands in America who are aware and very knowledgeable of the fact of treason. The only problem is no one's doing anything about it. And I'm hoping this video stems off because we have people who are literally knowing, aiding, and assisting that of known, long-established, declared enemies of the United States. And as a result of their aiding and assisting, now we're up near almost 5,000 Americans being murdered and killed right here on our own home ground, and potentially tens of thousands of Americans who have been killed since the time of back in the 1980s forward, actually even further back to the 1970s forward, by that of the aiding and assisting of that of our own elected government officials, who for the majority are right now still alive and knowing what they did, and they're still doing it. They're still aiding and assisting them to this very day, especially this woman right here. She is still aiding and assisting the totalitarian Islamic Muslims in infiltrating America, coming into America, and establishing their ideology and authority of governance here in America by the aiding and assisting for the majority of the Democratic Party, and out of the ignorance of the silence of the Republican Party. All are complicit in this aiding and assisting of our enemies, which is resulting in literally nearing 5,000 Americans being killed right now in America, and has the potential to result in millions of Americans being murdered somewhere within the near future, if it isn't stopped soon. These people are literally aiding and assisting the enemies and overthrowing our nation from within, and positioning them to be able to attack and do extreme harm on Americans right here on our own home ground. Vulnerable, ignorant Americans who have no idea of the hell that's about to befall us if we don't get this matter under control and stop it now. The sad thing about it is that we have been being warned for decades by people of the Islamic Muslims themselves. They're not hiding their agenda, which you'll see by the end of this video as well. They have been telling us now for all of our 244 years what they intend to do to us. They have been explicitly in videos and verbally expressing it within the last 20 years clearly to us, and taking action to show us they are serious, that they intend to destroy us and kill every one of us who refuse to submit to their authority. And aiding and assisting them has been, for the majority, that of the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party within the United States system of government has opened its doors and its platform for the totalitarian Islamic Muslims to be able to take positions in our own government within not only the highest levels of federal and Congress and the House of Senate and representatives of states, but also within many of the state positions of the state government itself, and that of county positions within county commissions, and city and town positions within elected positions, and where they are infiltrating across our nation and building mosques across our nation, of which These ignorant fools in our own government don't realize that when a Muslim builds a mosque, it is written in the Quran and directed in the Quran why they're to build a mosque, what the mosque means, and what have you when you study Islam. A mosque represents that of a government building in Islam because church and state in Islam are one and the same. The authoritarian governing members of their governing authority in the Islamic states like Arabia, Iran today, Iraq, what have you, these Islamic nations over in the East, all of the leaders are the government. And the governments conduct their business of government within the mosque. Now the mosque, yeah, they do pray in the mosque, but it's not really prayer. It's a totalitarian forced submission, and where they can monitor their population that has to come and do the prayers as they are told by the governing authorities, or they are killed. So understand, it's to make sure the indoctrination process is being conducted properly to ensure that all the Muslims who are under their control are being obedient servants and submitting servants of slaves to that of the Islamic rulers. That's what it's about, and that's what it's always been about for 1,400 years. And also in the mosque, they conduct their war preparation. They draft their fatwas. They hold court in there. So understand, this is not a church like a Christian church or a temple like a Buddhist temple where people just go to exercise that of their personal faith in their belief system of discipline. Okay, this is not just a place to go pray. It's a government building where all the Sharia law is done. They conduct court. They establish war plans, and they establish and they meet, and this is where they do all their government, like we do our government business in the capital of Washington D.C. or the Pentagon, or they do theirs there. That's each mosque is like a state capital for them. Any place they build a mosque, they assume they have conquered, and it should be enforced that Sharia law now takes over. This is why we hear the Muslims complaining that they should be allowed to have Sharia law wherever they have their mosque, because under their ideology, principles, and beliefs of that of the foreign rule of law, where whoever allows them to build a mosque the governing authority has submitted to them and agreed they are greater than them and that they are the higher authority and they should have power. That's what they believe. That when you allow them to build the mosque, they believe you have given that area to them. They own it now. It's a part of their Islamic states. So, this is what ignorance of our government doesn't understand. But we're going to show that as we progress forward. This is Hillary Clinton. I just want to take a quick listen to her so we can hear her actually aiding, assisting, and committing the treason.
Now, I'm afraid President Putin is actually making things somewhat worse. I do believe we can crush ISIS's enclave of terror. And to support this campaign, Congress should swiftly pass an updated authorization to use military force. The time for delay is over. We should get this done. Let's be clear, though. Islam is not our adversary. Muslims are peaceful and tolerant people and have nothing whatsoever to do with terrorism.
Now, this right here, what she says, it's pretty clear. She says that, and as we go forward, you're going to understand. So I believe that her intent of committing treason that she has done is literally intentional and knowing and wanting, because she has expressed so much in her time how much she knows about Islam. She has looked into Islam, what have you. So she has to be aware of the truth that I'm about to show you, and how she, if she's aware of these things, is willingly committing treason and knowing she's putting the American people and our nation at danger. So what she just said here is that Islam are peaceful people and that we are not at war with Islam. Let's just hear that one more time from her so we can get it verbatim.
People and have nothing whatsoever adversary. Islam is not our adversary. Muslims are peaceful and tolerant people and have nothing whatsoever to do with terrorism.
Now, as I'm saying, now just remember what Hillary Clinton says here, because this is the danger we have, because if she is truly this ignorant, after all that she claims to have studied in her great knowledge in government, and she is so unaware yet of the facts I'm about to show you, which I don't believe, I think she's fully aware, she's a self-serving, treasonous, no-good scumbag to this nation, along with all with her, who is responsible and accountable right now for near 5,000 Americans being killed right here on our own home ground by her actions in aiding and assisting her with other Democrats, and even the complicity of that of the deathly silenced Republican side who is ignorant as well and has done nothing to prevent these things from happening. So it's a complicity among where there's different levels of treason, but some is like in her case and many of the Democrats' case who have explicitly spoken out to defend known and long established and declared enemies of the United States, and which I'm going to show you and prove to you that the Islamic Muslims have been known enemies of the United States since the founding of this nation. They were declared the enemies of America, and matter of fact, all mankind, since the founding of our nation within the first and second and third and fourth administration of presidents of the United States of America. And these things have concluded all the way out throughout our history of the last 244 years. It has been well known and established that the totalitarian Islamic Muslims are the enemies of America and the American people of the United States of America. And this is an unquestionable fact of which we will prove as we progress forward. And in that progression, we're going to show, though, how in spite of that, this government, our own elected officials, have been aiding and assisting knowingly the enemies of America and are accountable, in my opinion, by the treasonal acts that they've committed for all the murders of the Americans who have been killed right here, because they should have known. There's no way they couldn't have known what they were doing. But the money flow coming out of these foreign totalitarian states have been buying them off, and they have been exchanging that of thousands of American lives in exchange for millions of dollars flowing into their own accounts. They have been selling us out. Treasonous, no-good scumbags. And she is one of the primary ones of it in the Democratic Party, who is probably her and her husband, Bill Clinton. Well, I can't really say that because, to be honest with you, it was a Republican who was actually probably one of the first ones, and that would be George Bush Jr., which was headed by his own father in their oil-rich businesses going all the way back to the 1980s with George Bush Sr. So understand it's not just Democrats. There's a complicity with the rhinos of Republicans who are not really Republicans. And we can see to this very day how right now the Bush family, and as well as the other rhinos who are associated with these things, what I'm saying, the Dick Cheneys and what have you, are as well complicit still to this day with that of the Democrats. And it's exposed that they are rhinos, Republican in name only. They were never truly a Republican. So we understand that the truth of these things are coming to light today. So as we progress forward, we're going to look, and we're going to look into more deeper of these matters. We're going to take a listen here. This was of Sanders beats Biden with support from American Muslims. Now, Barney Sanders with his socialist program, because understand that under the Islamic totalitarian regime, it's socialism. They control the aspect of what everyone will do for their life. You don't have a choice to say, like here in America, you can go to school and you can learn a trade and you can be whatever you want freely. In the totalitarian Islamic states, you will be told what you're going to do for a living. It's a socialist kind of state. You receive back what you have of what the governing authorities and powers to be there will give you under a socialist state. The majority of the wealth and the power and the prestige of life exist within that of the royal families and that of the controlling governing authorities, the imams and what have you. The leaders of the Islamic State are the ones who live, like they say, like kings. The average people, though, are more or less mortars who are, to do what they're told, to be obedient, to go do their prayers 5 times a day, dress as they're told, and to always be training to kill the kafar. And understand the kafar, the infidel, is anyone who's not a Muslim. And these people are trained, the Islamic totalitarian regimes train the Islamic Muslim slaves of their nation, because that's what they are, they're actually slaves. These people are controlled with every aspect. Their whole life is designed by Islam to keep them within a ritual of a day-to-day basis, and where they're always being programmed and indoctrinated to do what the Islamic leaders want them to do in their world pursuit for world domination and jihad to conquer the world. So, and we're going to see that as we progress forward. You're going to come to understand that. But I want to say Barney Sanders was very complicit in this. He has aided and assisted in as well bringing in these Islamic Muslims, knowing the actual threat. This guy goes back, I can remember him from the late 70s, early 80s. He was over with Fidel Castro in Cuba, and even in at the time before Russia, before the time of Ronald Reagan had taken down the Berlin Wall and we had the Cold War standoff, he was over when it was Soviet communist Russia, and with the Russians. This guy is a communist Russian scumbag himself. This guy is a traitor to this nation and always has been. Obviously, he's pushing for socialism now, and he supports that. And like I say, Islam is in support of that as well, which as we progress forward in the understanding of things in history, you're going to come to understand. I want to touch on something with Joe Biden, the current now sitting Democratic president, as well has been aiding, assisting, and he is still right now aiding and assisting that of known and long established declared enemies of America. And by this man's policies and actions today, he is about to cost the lives of tens of thousands of Americans more to be killed right here on our own home ground if he goes forward with the policies he's planning on doing and aiding and assisting that of known and long established enemies of the United States of America. With him at his age, it seems this man's suffering some from Alzheimer's. He doesn't really seem to be all with it, but in the sense of what he is with, he is a true Democrat. It is believed that he is a Ku Klux Klan member out of Pennsylvania, long well established, good friends with Robert Byrd and Lyndon B. Johnson, who was another Klan member out of Texas. Robert Byrd was a Klan member out of Virginia. Most of the Democrats, in truth, are associated one way or the other with the Ku Klux Klan. The Ku Klux Klan was founded out of the Democratic Party in 1865, following when they lost the Civil War against the Republicans. The Democrats were defeated in 1865 by Republican Abraham Lincoln and the Patriot American Republicans at that time. The Democratic Party are the founders of the Confederate slave states. This is another association they have with Muslims, is that the Muslims are actually slave nations as well as when we progress forward. We're going to see, like right now, we see all this adversity happening in America and this conflict happening and the division happening, all being pushed and created and manufactured by that of the Democratic Party. And what we don't realize in the racial divide, well, for the majority, it's lies. It's actual twisted lies of fake history and fake facts that have caused the racial divide, because the majority of black Americans don't even realize that it was not America who founded the black African slave trade. In fact, the people that we're talking about right now, the known and long established declared enemies of the United States, the Muslims, were the founders of the black African slave trade. Their so-called prophet founded the black African slave trade in 640 AD after invading North Africa. And they became aware of the black Africans then, and that was when they started to enslave them, and they started the black African slave trade around the world. In the near that was 1,200 years before America or the United States even existed on the earth. We were not present at the time. And for near 1,200 years, the black African people were under subject to slavery with the Islamic Muslims in amounts of like cruelty. When you look at some of the history, like you realize in Morocco and such as what have you. For example, the British kings would not, they enslaved their own white, common, poor, Irish, and Scottish. Most of the United Kingdom area, the slaves were white slaves, not black slaves. They didn't want the black African slaves in there. In order for the Muslims to try and coerce them into buying and purchasing black slaves, or to stop them from enslaving their own and buy the white slaves that the Muslims had, which would sell at twice the amount of black slaves, which is another little bit of, we'll touch on that later, because it cost twice as much for a white slave as a black slave, because, real quick, I guess we'll touch on it now. Muhammad had set the standard that white people were worth twice that of what black people were. When there was an act in where he had converted a white man into Islam, not realizing that the white man was a slave, because it was in his time, it was uncommon. They were white supremacists, the Arabs. They didn't believe in enslaving white people, but this white guy was a slave. And when his master came and said to him, well, why did you enslave him? You know, now he's a Muslim. I can't, you converted him to Islam. If he's a Muslim, I can't have him as a slave now. And, you know, it's like he got damaged, because it was illegal under Islamic law, or Sharia law, for a Muslim to be a slave. No Muslim can be a slave under Sharia law, even if he's a black Muslim or a white Muslim, doesn't matter. A Muslim cannot be a slave, but under their law, it's a little crazy. A black Muslim is a second-class Muslim. No, he doesn't have full privilege and immunities of that of a white Muslim, because Islam is the founders of racism of white and black, which as we go forward, we'll look into that a little bit as well. But the point I'm trying to say is that when this man was compensated with 2 black slaves, to compensate him for the loss of his one white slave, and this became the standard now. So if you were to buy slaves from the Islamic Muslims, you had to pay twice as much for a white slave than you would a black slave. So this is how the black African wound up becoming the majority of slaves in the world, being sought after or used for labor, because you could get twice the amount of labor for the same amount of money. Makes sense, right? But just so that we understand that. Now, Joe Biden has been talking about bringing in more Muslims to America. And I believe Joe Biden is fully aware, because he was very close with Barack Obama, and he was very close with all the Muslims that were taking place during the Barack Obama administration, of which we're going to touch on in the future. But we're just bringing up to a matter about these things with these people. Now, here we touch on the basis of that. We see here it was in 2006 when the first Muslim was elected into our Congress. And this would have been with Keith Ellison, I believe it was. Yeah, Keith Ellison was the first, and I'm trying to see the date. It was in 2006. He was the first elected Muslim to our government. In all of our 240 at the time would have been 240 year, 30-something year history. Never before was a Muslim elected into our government. There's reason for that because they're known and declared enemies. Since that time, we've also had these two who are elected into our government, which we know. Both of these and all of these Muslims literally condemn America on a daily basis. We also had Carson here. Andre Carson is another one. Andre Carson and Ellison are both of the Nation of Islam, which is they're black Muslims, and we'll touch on in the future that you'll understand the idiocy of the ignorance of these people as well when we look at Ellison and Andre Carson, how ignorant and stupid these people are to be black Americans in Islam. You'll realize as we progress forward that that's not a very smart thing. As I said, Muhammad was the founder of the black African slave trade, and Muslims were the founders of the black racism. They were the founders of racism as far as that, which one as we progress forward we'll see and you'll understand that more clearer. But we're going to listen here again to Hillary Clinton.
We've had Muslims in America since George Washington, and we've had many successful Muslims. We just lost a particularly well-known one with Muhammad Ali.
So as we see again, she's bragging about her knowledge of Muslims, and she wants to say that Muslims have been here in America as if it's something like as if they've been here like our friends. And we know during Barack Obama's administration, she was Secretary of State, and very supporting. Joe Biden was his vice president. They were all very supporting and complicit with Americans coming into America. And like I said, through the Democratic platform of which she aided and assisted in Barack Obama himself getting elected, who's a very major Islamic synthesizer and was raised as a Muslim himself. Both his real father and stepfather was Islamic Muslims. And Barack Obama doesn't hide that prior to him coming into the mainland from Hawaii, after being half raised for the rest of his life after his mom died by his grandparents, who were known and well-established communists, he had moved to Chicago and joined a Christian church and claims to have converted later in the years from Islam to Christianity in that Christian church, of which that church, if you look up Obama's original church, he had separated himself from that minister because that minister was very close friends with Farrakhan, and a lot of people believe that church was a front to lure in that of black Americans to then indoctrinate them to become Muslim Americans through the Nation of Islam. And, he tried to separate from that. So anyway, a lot of people don't believe Barack Obama is a Christian. He claims to be a Christian. I myself personally don't believe he's a Christian. I myself realized that Barack Obama was in Arabia and attended mosque in Arabia. And so if you know anything of Islamic law, and these people don't play around when it comes to their law, if Obama truly left Islam and became a Christian, he is known as what's called kafar and an apostate. The punishment in an Islamic state, the law of Sharia states that if an apostate, we're going to have a Muslim confirm this for you as we progress forward too. So understand everything I'm saying, I'm about to verify. Just be patient with me. Now, if you're an apostate, and that means if you were a Muslim and then you left Islam, you can leave the Islamic territory and you're okay. They're not going to chase you down if you leave. But if you come in back to that Islamic state that's under Islamic rule, under Islamic Sharia law, and the constitution of that nation is Islam by the Quran, the law says you must either A, submit and reconvert back to Islam, or B, you'll get killed. They have to kill you. That's the law. And it is forbidden in any Islamic state for any Christian, kafar, infidel, non-Muslim to enter a mosque in an Islamic state. Any non-Muslim who enters a mosque in an Islamic state will be put to death if he's caught. Now, so you're telling me Obama went to Arabia, knowing that Arabia knows he is a converted from Muslim to a Christian, claims to still be a Christian, and is in an Islamic state as a former Muslim who's now an apostate, who became a Christian and left Islam, and then goes and attends mosque in an Islamic state and gets to leave alive. Now, I know a lot of people say, well, he was able to do that because he was the president of the United States. They wouldn't do that. That's a lie. They would not give a damn who he was. They would have killed him because that's the law. They cannot break the law. These people are disciplined to this law, unlike that of any ideology in the world and disciplined to it. They're indoctrinated with this stuff since they were children. It's ingrained in them. It's their, believe me, if you understood how barbaric these people are in their own, and what they'll do to their own people in these circumstances, once as we move forward, you're going to see. Trust me. Matter of fact, there's greater rewards for somebody who kills an apostate. So the royal guards were standing there with swords next to this man. Believe me, if I was a royal guard, the prestige and the rewards about what they believe in that would have befell my family had I cut off Obama's head as an apostate, it would have been worth whatever they would have done to me for it. And these people blow themselves up for their belief. They believe dying is great for Islam. So don't tell me that they wouldn't have died for the cause of killing an apostate by the order of Allah in their Quran, because they would have. So I believe Obama is 100% a Muslim, and he's just perpetrating a fraud, and that's just the way it is. And he's probably maybe as ignorant as this man. Now, we heard Hillary Clinton. I want to go back here. She speaks of, right here, I just want to touch base on what she says.
Ali, particularly well-known, many successful Muslims. We just lost a particularly well-known one with Muhammad Ali.
I love the way this woman tries to pull this off as this, and I love the fact, too, that she's really acting as though she understands, and that's good, because you know what? It tells me that my charge against her for treason, knowing and complicit treason, is true, because she's very confident in that she's aware of the truth. Now, she mentions Muhammad Ali, and as you see, we go forward, we get to this. Now, I want everyone to listen to why Muhammad Ali claims why he left being a Christian, because he was raised a Christian, and he had the name Cassius Marcellus Clay, of which I don't have up. I'm going to bring this up real quick. Just bear with me. I just want to bring this up. This is Cassius Marcellus Clay, the man that Muhammad Ali was named after. Cassius Marcellus Clay was an abolitionist during the time of Abraham Lincoln. He was a man who never owned a black African slave in his life. Matter of fact, he established schools and trade schools and stuff to help escape runaway slaves who came into the free states be able to establish lives and careers, help them get places to live, taught them a trade so they could get a job, work, and take care of themselves and their families as they now with their newfound freedom. Cassius Marcellus Clay was an abolitionist. He was one man who was right up there with Abraham Lincoln. And actually, I believe in the deep study of our American history, this man deserves more credit for the Emancipation Proclamation than Abraham Lincoln himself. Because Lincoln would not have been able to even get elected without the support of Cassius Marcellus Clay. Muhammad Ali's parents, knowing of the great abolitionist he was out of Kentucky, is why they named their son after him, because they understood the important role that Cassius Marcellus Clay played in making sure that all black Americans would receive the Emancipation Proclamation and be freed. And just like any other, like we declared in our Declaration of Independence, that all men are created equal, that they would enjoy the equal protection of the law and the Constitution like any American in the United States of America. And in every state, not just in the free states of where, he felt, where they always to run to, what have you. But I just wanted to touch on that. Now we're going to go back to here. I want you to listen to what Muhammad Ali says, to why he converted and why he changed his name.
Follow them. Believe, hear, understand the teachings of my Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and coming to knowledge of myself is that we want to be called after names of our people, which are names to fit us black people. And Clay was a white man's name, it was a slave name. And I'm no longer Clay, I'm no longer a slave, so now I'm Muhammad Ali.
Do you answer?
So he claims now that Clay, the name he had, was a slave master's name, of which obviously I just want to make the point to understand this man's very ignorant. He doesn't understand that Clay, the man he was named after, was an abolitionist, was a man who fought in the Civil War to free black Americans, never owned a slave in his life, and he took the name Muhammad Ali. Okay, now Muhammad is the prophet of Islam. Ali was his cousin. Both of those men are white men who owned black African slaves. So he gave up the name of a white man who never owned a black slave, who fought and gave nearly and fought his whole life to free black Americans so that they would be free and enjoy the equal rights of all men, as we declared in our Declaration of Independence. and spent his life dedicated to educating now free black Americans even after the Civil War time and helping them establish their lives and what have you. He gave up that man's name and took the name of the founder of the black African slave trade, Muhammad, because Muhammad was the founder of the black African slave trade after their invading North Africa back in the mid-600s. After they invaded North Africa, they started to then enslave the black Africans. The only black Africans they allowed to convert to Islam was that of the tribal leaders. They would give them special perks and what have you, because the tribal leaders would round up their own people of the tribes in herds to give to the Islamic Muslims to take out to the coast to put on their ships to distribute out as slaves around the world. So, it's just amazing the ignorance of people. He died never knowing the truth. When she says he died a Muslim. He died never knowing the truth. No one had ever gotten close enough. I had actually written this man letters trying to tell him the truth. No joke. I'm dead serious. I did try, but I imagine they never got to him. Somebody must have been screening them, because the evidence I had that I could have presented to him from the Quran would have proved my point and probably would have jarred him out. As if, as we progress forward, you see, I even made a video on the actual evidence I even tried to send him, and I did the same evidence, which is evidence I sent to Mike Tyson, because Mike Tyson was considering converting, and some people say he has converted to Islam, which would be another ignorant idiot like this guy was. It's sad to say, because it would be a shame to see, because I like Mike Tyson. I think he was a great fighter, it's just a shame. It's disgraceful that the way these people play people for fools. But I want to go here and listen real quick to this with Joe Biden.
Folks, if you're interested,
because this right here touches on what Hillary Clinton's saying and what the Democratic platform stands for. He makes it very clear here, and it shows the ignorance of Muhammad Ali as well in this video, is that, you see, people believe what they're told is the truth without fact-checking, and that's the problem. You see, the majority of black Americans are ignorant to the unbelievable point, but it's also due not to be that they're not capable of learning. It's manufactured ignorance by that of the Democrats, who control the majority of the black communities, and they deprive them of proper education. They have the highest illiteracy rate, so they don't have the ability to be able to learn like most people. They don't get the chance to read. They're not educated properly to be able to understand the truth of American history or world history, or the things I'm saying to you. So I'm hoping by this video, some of them see this, they can hear it verbally, and then maybe get somebody to read into the things I'm saying that can read for them, and they would enlighten themselves to the truth so they're not made fools of, like Muhammad Ali, with such things. But because they all go by the principles of what Joe is saying here, and let's listen to what Joe says.
join me. I could use the help, because must. If you're interested, choose unity over division. Choose unity.
Here's what I want you to just
We choose unity over division. We choose science over fiction. We choose truth over facts.
You hear that? They choose truth over facts. And the reason why they do that, what they're telling you, just like the Muslims, what they're telling you they want you to believe is the truth. They don't want you to question it, though. They don't want you to question it. They don't want you to look into the history. They don't want you to look into the evidence of things of which I'm about to show you. Because if you do, you'll find out what the truth they told you is the truth is lies. Because the facts prove it. That's why they don't want you. They choose truth over facts, because they don't want you looking at the facts. Because the fact is going to prove that the majority of the Democratic's truth is lies. And that's why I just wanted to play that one thing so you understand this is what the Democrats' platform.
Choose unity over division. We choose science over fiction. We choose truth over facts.
There you go. That's their platform. So now as we progress forward, we see here the rise of the Nation of Islam. Now, on this rise of the Nation of Islam, which starts in 1934 here in the United States. Islam really didn't exist in the United States until 1934, though there's a lot of propaganda by these people. The Islam, even on the way it was founded in 1934, was based off the principles of what we just heard Joe saying, truth that is actually lies. They had convinced the majority of the black, now free Americans in the United States that they were, before coming here, Muslims. Well, that's not true. I had done a whole video on this, which you can look at that video. The video is going to be here in the links as well. But understand that it is to this day against Sharia law of the Islamic Muslims to sell a Muslim as a slave. The majority of all slaves in the transatlantic slave trade that came here were purchased by the kings of England, and those who owned the slaves, of the Tory in the South who managed the slave plantations, are people who were purchasing these slaves and having them brought into America to sell in the slave trade, were purchasing them from the Islamic Muslims. It is forbidden under Sharia Islamic law for them to sell a Muslim. So the only people they could have been selling as slaves would have been innocent tribal people or Africans who were Jewish or Christian, which at that time, before Islam, for near 700 years before Islam, the only ideologies that would have been in Africa would have been that of the tribal cultural ideology, of tribal people with mythical deities, or that of Judaism or Christianity. And many of the Africans were Christians before the continent of America even developed, because that's the continent over where Jesus was. He was on the African continent over that way, in the Asian continent or what have you. And they knew about Christianity and Jesus before anybody here did, because it wasn't until near 1,700 years later that America was established to be what it is, and they knew about it when it happened. So Africans were converting to Christianity back in like 600, way back 2,000 years ago, way before America even existed. We're only 244 years new as America, and then the establishment of the continent developing is only like 400 and I think 80 something years. So I mean, we're talking Jesus was here 2,000 years ago on the Asian continent off the continent of Africa, and where they were exposed to Christianity before anyone in America ever was. So I mean, it's idiocy to try and assume these things without realizing the reality of how things work. It was again, now if any Muslim was being sold as a slave, well, that's just impossible. It wouldn't have happened. Trust me, these people are too disciplined to the order of what it is. The only people they would have been selling as black Africans to that of the Europeans that bring in and for the transatlantic slave trade would have been either Jewish black Africans, tribal Africans, innocent people that knew nothing of the Jewish, Christian, or Islamic culture, or that of Christians. But they could not have been selling Muslims, because it's forbidden by Sharia law to enslave a Muslim, even a black person who is a Muslim, as a slave. You can't do it. They're an Abid, though, second-class Muslim, but they still cannot be sold as a slave. It's just forbidden by Sharia law. So I just want to make that clear, that the notions by the Nation of Islam that black Americans were Muslims is a lie. It's a blatant right-out lie. It's just no way. It's just no way it can be true. This is just, and history itself, too, depicts this thing as a fact to be known, that the Muslims being transported. Now, here is on my video of where I make about the Nation of Islam and the truth of the lies of the Nation of Islam. Most of the Nation of Islam doesn't realize, they believe, the Nation of Islam teaches them that Islam is that of the black African ideology of their people. They believe that Muhammad was a black man, and that the original Muslims were black people. And this is all done through propagated lies that were all in an organized form of what is known as the Nation of Islam, put together by a white Arab named Fard, who had indoctrinated and taught these things to a man known as Elijah Muhammad. And he's the founder of the Nation of Islam. And this is what they were led to believe with lies, because it's just not true. And some of the things, like I'll point out, this is the guy Fard right here in my video, which I'm showing you. I'm just going to click through some of my video. I'm not going to play the whole thing. And with Fard now, when we go ahead, just some information. You can watch this. There'll be a link to this video. But some of the things, like here's about the thing too, if you read that on there, you can see about the Tikiaka, about their ability to lie and deceive. I mentioned this again in my video. But here are some of the things in my video of which I want to touch on, what you can see here. Like these are the Islamic writings. So I try to inform the Islamic Nation of Islam black Americans about the truth. And the truth is that Muhammad was a white man. And this is undeniable by the history of Islam itself. As you can see in this writing back here, the Prophet was white with an elegant face. And someone was asked here, I said to him, did you see the messenger? He said, yes, he was white with an elegant face. Islamic Muslims like to keep their deception pretty good. So they'll tell the black Americans that whiteness was of purity. But here you can see where it's regarding, here he says the Prophet would say that such and such on his left side, so much is that the whiteness of his, I can't see what it says, but the whiteness of his shin, I believe this is what it says. As we move forward, these things become more clear right here. Oh, the whiteness of his forearms. And the whiteness of his forearms, so you understand. I'm just going through these things are in the Islamic writings. Here you have the whiteness of his armpits. And again, they all say that this could be a reflection of light. If you talk to a regular Arab Muslim or the true Muslims, to cover up with the Nation of Islam, they try and say, oh, that's the whiteness of purity, that's the whiteness of light, that's the whiteness of, and they'll try and hide the fact that Muhammad's a white man, because it kind of throws the whole Nation of Islam thing down the toilet, right? Kind of really does. It throws it down the toilet if he turns out to be a white guy. And when you find out how white he becomes, which we're going to have evidence to show that, you're going to say, oh my God, right? But anyway, the whiteness of his thigh, we see here. Here we see, it says here, I saw the messenger of Allah with a white complexion and some white hair. White complexion makes clear this is not light or enlightenment or whiteness of purity. It starts to get pretty clear. And then here is proof that he owned black slaves. Too bad Muhammad Ali didn't read this part. Understand, like I say, too, the abrogated Quran we were earlier talking about, that's the Quran Muhammad Ali was, in the Nation of Islam uses, is the abrogated Quran of the lies, the deceptiveness, not the truth. In the true Qurans and the true Islamic writings, where you'll find these things, of which they keep from the Islamic Nation of Islam, black Muslims. They don't show them these things, but I'm showing them, and they can go and find, because these are actual Islamic writings. These are within the Islamic history of his followers, of the fatwas, the laws, and of the Islamic teachings and scholars of Islam for 1,400 years. These are the facts. Right here it says, I went to the house of the Prophet, and behold, Allah's messenger was staying in a mashaba, attic room, and a black slave of Allah's. So I just want to make the point that you understand that Muhammad had black slaves. Here we say another one here where it says Allah's messenger was on a journey. He had a black slave called Joshua. Okay, so I'm just making the point so you understand through this video, of which I do in that video point out. And then too, he says here, there's a thing with the Nation of Islam, they call white people the devil. And this is funny, it's so, the hypocrisy of the ignorance of people and not understanding the truth of things and how they twist it. And the Muslims, and true Muslims, and trust me, I lived among a Muslim majority population from 1988 and 1989 for near 2 years. And I'll tell you what, on this part right here, with the true Muslims, they just laugh at the black Americans and how ignorant and easy they are to fool about these things. Because, I can even remember when I was among them showing me these things. Some of these things, I knew a lot about it when I was younger, but during this here, I really got to learn a lot more. I can remember Muslims telling me how we allow the blacks to be too free, that if they're not Muslim blacks, and even that here, how they're not really blacks, because the Nation of Islam, they don't really consider them to be true Muslims. They just consider them to be very obedient obib, which means black slave. They just, and they get privilege for being good slaves. And that's what they say. They say Nation of Islam Muslims are good slaves. So they give them prestige, and a good slave gets rewarded for doing good deeds. That's what they say. But here it says, I have heard that it was of him that the apostate said, whoever wants to see Satan, let him take a look at Nebtel B. I can't say this name. He was a sturdy black man with long flowing hair, inflamed eyes, and dark ruby cheeks. So he says, if you want to know what the devil looks like, look at this black guy over here, right? He's telling you, look at this black guy. This black guy is the example of what Satan looks like. But in the Nation of Islam, they're told that the Muslims believe that the white man is the devil. So this is what they believe. And this was all done in, like I said, 1934 with a man named Fard who handed it off to the Nation of Islam, the founder, Elijah Muhammad. And this was for the purpose of dividing the white and the black people, of which with this indoctrination, many of the blacks who fell into this ideology of lies, of course, seeing the white man now as the evil, even a white Republican is evil, and it did by the 1960s, as we know, cause a division to where now, we know the majority of black Americans vote Democrat. They're with the Democratic Party of the Confederate slave states. Boom, blows your mind, right? But it's what's happening. So anyway, I just wanted to put that point there. Now, real quick though, we're going to take a look and move real quick. I'm just going to jump. You can watch this video. I'll put this video link in here. But this right here, this is Muhammad's 34th grandson that the Muslims say looks just like what the descriptions of Muhammad are from the actual Qurans and the actual descriptions of him in his time. This is the 34th grandson, Sheikh Muhammad al-Yaqub, I can't say his name, but he's the 34th grandson of Muhammad. This right here, this guy right here, red hair, Richie Cunningham, Opie, pale looking dude, that's what Muhammad looked like. Because that's his 34th grandson. Yeah, there's reality. So understand, Muhammad was not a black man. He's the founder of racism. He was a white man. One other thing I want to touch on real quick, back on the thing I wanted to, right here. So you understand, a fatwa is an Islamic law. This is for the Nation of Islam people who may see this, black Americans who may see this, so you can wake up to the reality here. And you can fact check these things if you want. Right here is an Islamic writing. It said that the judgment against anyone who rejects the Prophet is that he is killed. And we're going to justify these things as we move forward. Because you find like Hillary Clinton and many of the Democrats defend them and they say, oh, those things are of ancient times. They don't go on anymore. It's not practiced anymore. That's a lie. These people know it's a lie. They know what's going on today. But what he says here is true. He said that the judgment against anyone who rejects the Prophet is that he is killed. So that means anybody who rejects Islam, anyone who is known as kafar or infidels, people who are not Muslims and are offered the opportunity to become Muslim, they reject it. The Muslims are ordered by the Quran, by the order of their Prophet Muhammad, by the order and structure of Islam as an ideology of a national foreign country. They must kill those people. And I'm going to verify these things with you, that we have known this since the founding of our nation. Hillary Clinton and our government representatives should be very aware of this, or they should never have taken a position in government. They should know our history. They should know who our declared and known enemies are and who are a threat to the American continent of our nation as the American people. They should know who our enemies are and who are a threat to our lives. And I do believe they do know. As government, they should know, they do know. They're just complicit in it because they don't care. They really don't care. They're self-serving for the money. But anyway, here, this guy says that the companion said that whoever says that the Prophet was black is killed. The Prophet was not black. So you understand, this is not my opinion. These are the founders' words of the people who follow Muhammad, of that of his own followers, who had made a fatwa, a law, in the Islamic true law, that if anyone says the Prophet is black, but they'll excuse that for what they call tiyaka, their right to conceal and lie. They can lie about these things to forward the agenda of Islam. But if they try to say it in truth, knowingly, like if an imam, an Arab imam, says to a Muslim, black man who converted to become a Muslim, what color was Muhammad? And he says, oh, he was black because that's what he was taught through tiyaka. And then he'll inform him, no, Muhammad was a white man. Now, what color was Muhammad? If he refuses to accept the truth by this fatwa, they'll kill him. That's the way it goes. And they're not playing. They do it all the time. In the Islamic states, they kill people if they don't accept the truth. Once, they convert you with soft Islam, they convert you with the lies of the abrogated Quran, and then once you're converted and they have dominance over an area and they're taking it over, all those now converted under the abrogated Quran and the falsehoods of the Quran must now accept the true Islam, and if you don't, you become an example in the street by getting your head cut off. And this is a fact. I'm not kidding you. But I just wanted to point out there that you understand that there's a fatwa, a law that says if you call Muhammad a black man, you will be put to death. So I just wanted to cover that real quick. And then, like I said, when we move forward. Now, this is Farrakhan.
Hey, man, he knows the truth.
This is Farrakhan now. This is a guy who leads the Nation of Islam today. And the sad part about it is you want to talk about a man who's a scumbag. This guy has known the truth of everything I just mentioned his whole life. He sold the black man out, his own people out a long time ago. He's like an Ellison. And I'm not talking about Keith Ellison, the Muslim, but that Muslim Keith Ellison is related to the Ellison I'm speaking of. Ellison was one of the largest plantation owners and slaveholders back in the 1830s, and his family was actually, by the 1850s, the largest of black slaveholders back in the time when slavery was legal still in this with the Tory Democrats. And mind you, that the Ellison I'm speaking of in that time was a free black man. He was a free black man who owned more black slaves than any white man owned. So just understand that this was the kind of guy Farrakhan is. He's a sellout. He's a sellout and he's self-serving. But now we're going to move on from that. And we're going to get to a point because you know what? A lot of people are saying, why should we believe you? Well, you know what? You don't have to believe me because there's people who know what I'm saying. And this right here is Sandra Solomon. And she was a former Arabian Islamic Muslim, raised her whole life under Sharia law as a Muslim. She was taught the tenets of Islam to the extreme of what any Muslim would learn them. And she became aware of the truth and escaped Arabia and now lives in Canada as a free person in Canada. And she now devotes her life to trying to expose the truth of the lies of Islam and to wake the world up to the dangers of Islam. And she tries to warn that of the Canadian people of the threat of Islam as well as the American people. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick listen to Sandra Solomon in this video.
In Saudi Arabia, we learned the Islamic, the Quran and the Hadith. I was fully understanding what Islam it's all about. And I faced so many problems when I used to live in Saudi Arabia. I was forced to wear the hijab. If I'm refusing, I was physically abused a lot just because I refused the hijab.
Wow.
And they forced me into a marriage. Forced marriage, it's part of Islamic way of life. Women in Islam, it's a second-class citizen. They don't have freedom of speech. They cannot live freely, and there's no free thoughts. There's no free speech in Sharia law, and I faced so many problems as well. Since I was in school as well, they kicked me out from school many times. I lost opportunity to continue my education just because I was always arguing and questioning Islam, this is considered a blasphemy. You're not allowed to question. You just have to submit, and no question asked.
So as an intelligent individual, which I
Yes.
can tell that you are,
Yeah.
you see through this book.
Yeah.
You see through it all.
Right.
Just like I myself see through most of our Canadian statutes and laws.
Right.
I don't accept them.
Yeah.
So you've been outspoken about this,
Yeah.
and that forced you to have to leave your country of birth.
Right. And when things happen, through my life, when I came to Canada, I came with my son, but at a certain time, I had to leave him a little bit with his dad. After hardly I got my divorce, it wasn't easy as well. And when I told them, like years later, it's like it's a long story, but I'm cut it short. When I told them that I left Islam, I'm a Christian now. My son at that time was in Saudi Arabia, and they told me, you're not gonna come to see him. We will kill you if you come to Jordan again. And I was. They told me you will never see your son again. But praise the Lord, miraculously I got my son back to me, but it wasn't easy. It was really, really hard.
Where's your son now?
He's with me now.
In Canada.
Yes.
In the city
Praise
of
the Lord.
Mississauga.
Yes.
Praise him.
Yes.
Well done. Good
Amen.
for you.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
Well, the Quran itself now.
I just want to explain to you real quick about this woman. Grew up her whole life as she's exploded in Saudi Arabia. She was under the Sharia law. You hear a little bit about her brief life, but the main part of here that I want you to just hear that bit so you hear from her and understand this is a person who's lived it. She has more than just knowledge, she has wisdom. I've read much of her literature. I've studied many of her videos in the past. I briefly met her several times at things that she's done where she's been here in the States. She's, just to hear her story is an incredible story. But what she's about to go into now will touch on the basis of some of the things that I've been speaking about. So you'll hear it directly from that of somebody who grew up in that ideology and knows that ideology better than any American or Nation of Islam fooled black American. She knows the truth. She was raised in Saudi Arabia, indoctrinated with this stuff since she was a child. So we're going to continue on listening to her for a little bit and get a gist of that, of what a person with actual wisdom has to say.
I have been reading Bill Warner's English translation of this book, and I am blown away by how this thing is structured. My understanding of the book, without the proper interpretations of it,
Right.
is that it's organized from the longest story at the beginning
Yeah.
to the shortest story at the end,
Right.
which leaves nothing but controversy and contradiction
Yes.
in between all the pages. Maybe you could clear that up for everybody.
Okay. The Quran itself, it's mixed between the Maccayan. We should associate it with the history of Muhammad, the founder of Islam. If we don't know the history of Muhammad, we have to put it all together with the Quran, because it's a Maccayan stage and the Medinan stage. It's actually two Qurans in one. So the Maccayan chapters different than the Medina chapters, and what he said in the Medina chapters abrogated what he said in the Medina and Maccayan chapters. So
So it
technically, we should just take the Medina one, because the Maccayan one, it's been abrogated.
All right. So when you're saying Maccayan, you mean Meccan. Like
Mecca,
that's
in
from
Mecca. When he
Yes,
was
very
in
good.
Muhammad, when he was in Mecca for almost 13 years, he was preaching that he's a prophet, telling people, I am a prophet, follow me, and people do not listen to him, and he was trying to deceive them using the taqiyya and lying and pretending that he's a nice guy. He's bringing a religion, and you have your religion, I have my religion. You know, these all like Maccayan verses that the Muslims, they always use it when they're in a stage, you know, like for when they're in a Maccayan stage, like for now, like the Maccayan, the Muslim now in Canada, they playing the Maccayan stage, taqiyya and deceive until they have a full control of the country. Then the Median Quran will appear.
So as you can see, what I was saying earlier is what she's vindicating. She's trying to tell you, and she knows because she was raised and she understands, she was indoctrinated with this ideology so that she could teach this to as well her own children. It would be expected of her as a Muslim raised in this indoctrination that she would expect, and she knows the truth of these things. So understand what she's saying, and that's what I'm saying, the abrogated, non-abrogated. They use the abrogated to deceive people, and she's verifying what I said. And then how she says that when they become the majority, then they use the non-abrogated, which is the true Quran, of the true methods and practice of Islam, then they get enforced under that of Sharia law. She's vindicating what I've been telling you the whole time here. And I figured this was a perfect video of somebody who grew up their whole life, was raised under the tenets of Islam in an Islamic state of Arabia, and knows it without question better than any American would or any Nation of Islam person would, because a Nation of Islam person learns under that of the abrogated, not the true Quran. She understands the whole secrecy of how it's done because she grew up learning this in an Islamic state. So she understands the true Islamic state teachings of it. So I want everybody to understand that. This woman is not an American or Canadian. She is actually a woman who was raised her whole life, indoctrinated with the teachings of true Islam within the Islamic states. So let's continue listening to her.
So the Meccan version of this
Yes.
is the nice version.
Yes.
Yes, that's the one that's polite and has a little bit
A
to
little
do
bit,
with
even
love.
though it has some like obvious word, like it would say like ya ayyuhal kafirun, oh ya infidels. Like he already started calling the people infidels.
Right?
The other
And that's in
one-
the good book.
Yeah, this is from the good side as well. Like he already put the label of the people who's not gonna follow him, infidels. It's all Muhammad ideology that's been written in this
So
book.
it's just one guy wrote this book, essentially.
It's just one guy that he,
Or better yet, one guy who dictated notes and someone wrote it down for him.
Yes.
My understanding was that
Yes.
Muhammad was illiterate.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Abdullah ibn al-Jarrah. There is many people also write it, and actually, surprisingly, one of the people who used to write for Muhammad when he's, telling him what to write, and this guy was writing something, like Muhammad, he said something, but he was writing something else, and then he said to him, "Oh, but isn't better if we say something?" He said, "Okay, just put it this way." So the guy who was writing for him actually left Muhammad and figure out that he's not a prophet or anything, and there's nothing he's revealing to him, and he actually left him and left the Arabic Peninsula and went to Ethiopia, and he became Christian. The one.
Oh, wow, yeah. She is talking about something I was mentioning earlier about a guy who's the apostate. I know the story she's speaking about with this guy because later, like she's talking about the abrogated Quran, and then when he came back and that Quran was abrogated, the person she's speaking of was one of the first people to be killed as an apostate in Islam, of which today the Islamic Muslims deny that such things happen. They deny that because under the abrogated part, there's no mention of it. It's under the new true Islam of where the apostate rules apply, not the abrogated. So I didn't realize it was far into it that she talks about these things this in depth. So let's continue on listening to what she has.
The guy who was writing for Muhammad.
Let's just recap what
Yes.
you just said there, because
Yes.
that's hilarious.
Yes, Abdullah ibn al-Jarrah, his name.
Muhammad
Yes.
was dictating notes to someone else
Yes.
to say, I am the prophet, I am the word of Allah.
Yes.
Everything I say is law because
Yes,
it comes from Allah.
Yes.
Then this guy would
Yes.
write something else down,
Right.
read back what he
Yeah.
had written,
Yes.
and Muhammad would just say, yeah, okay, go ahead with that,
Yeah,
because
it's better.
the job is done.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Like it fits better because once the people who do not know how to read the Quran in Arabic, that's why I always recite the Quran in Arabic, because I understand the original language of it. It's like a poetry. It has to fit nice together. So as he is
Oh, boy.
writing, he has to put it together. It's like when you write a poem. You have to put things together.
Trial and error. Yeah.
Exactly.
Testing. Yeah.
So
But we touched on that, so I just wanted to have this where people
That's the
understand what we were saying. Now we're going to move forward here with a little bit. What Islam taught me about the Jews. This is something else from another one of Sandra Solomon's videos I just want to touch on. So you understand it's not my opinion that they hate Christians and Jews. It is actually what is taught and indoctrinated in that of the people in the true Islamic State. So
Habash. He is one of the leader of Fatah movement, and he led the second Intifada. I was raised in Saudi Arabia. 100% Sharia law, constitution. As a Palestinian and Muslim, they teach us since we are young that we have to hate the Jews. Jews, they are our enemies. They occupied our land, and we have to wipe them off. We have to get the land back from the occupiers, and we have to beautify the Aqsa Mosque from the filthy Jews. I was taught that Jews, they are infidels, kafirs, and we have to hate them and get rid of them. This coming from the constitutional law book, the Quran. It's the constitutional book for every Muslim on the first of the earth. That's the Sharia law constitutional book. The anti-Semitism is rooted in the Quran and in the teaching of the Hadith that came from the founder of Islam, Muhammad.
So I just want to put here so you understand. This is the indoctrination and teaching. She has been indoctrinated. It must be, it's incredible when you look into the stories of her, other people like her, and you understand the hardship and the insanity and the things they faced in their life with the indoctrination, and their ability to overcome these things is just incredible. But I just wanted you to hear it from people. She grew up in Saudi Arabia, was raised an Islamic Muslim, and she is telling the truth from somebody firsthand. And you know that she's telling the truth because her story coincides with many others who have left Islam and escaped the totalitarian regime of Islam. And we're going to hear that from others as well. Right here, I just wanted another quick brief from her.
Various statutes.
Yes, thank you again for having me. Well, as an ex-Muslim, and I was raised in Saudi Arabia, I'm very well knowledgeable about the Quran. The fact that we've been memorizing and studying the Quran since we are 6 years old kids, and I used to memorize more than half of it. And I was raised in Saudi Arabia all the way till high school, and we're studying every day. We have something called the commentary, which is tafsir in Arabic, and to study more and more Islamic Sharia law. Let me make it clear for everyone that each and every Muslim on the face of the planet, regardless of their sect, it's either Sunnis or Shia or any other sects, they believe that the Quran, this is their constitution. The oath that we have to give in school every day, that we have to say and repeat it always and always, that Muhammad, Islam is our religion, Muhammad is our prophet, Quran, it's our constitution, jihad, it's our way, and dying for Allah, it's our ultimate dream. And the fact that I start criticism of the Quran and when I read the Quran.
Okay, what she is saying here, I just want to touch on real quick. The Constitution of the Islamic Republic of Iran is the Quran, so that everyone understands that. What she is saying, this is the Constitution. The Quran itself is the Constitution of the foreign Islamic states of Iran. Arabia, Saudi Arabia, anywhere that's an Islamic nation. The Constitution of that Islamic nation is the Quran. So understand that when we have an American politician electing an Islamic Muslim in the Democratic Party, which is the platform that has been allowing the Muslims, they take their oath upon their Quran. So when they're taking the oath upon the Quran, which is against our Constitution, not allowed in our nation, because they're swearing an allegiance to that of a foreign totalitarian regime, the Constitution that they're swearing allegiance to is the one they got their hand upon, is the foreign totalitarian constitution of the Islamic States. This is the idiocy of what we're allowing in this country. And I'm telling you right now, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, and many of the people within the Democratic Party are fully 100% aware of this. And it appears that I know Trey Gowdy of the Republican Party was aware of this because he raised issues back when Keith Ellison was elected about the potential conflicts with that of the Islamic tenets and that of American ideology and culture and values in our laws. So I know he had some kind of knowledge of it, but obviously the Republicans sit ignorant, silent, and say nothing about it, as they themselves witnessed the acts of treason and have been now for 20 years watching thousands of Americans be killed right here on our own soil in their complicitness of allowing these things to happen. It's just ridiculous, because I'm telling you right now, it's treason what these people are doing. We're going to continue on. This right here is Mossab Hussein Yassaf, and this guy here is was actually of Hamas. His father was very high-ranking in the Islamic states of the cultures of the true Eastern Islamic regimes. His father is one of the founders of Hamas, and he was in line to be royalty, like a prince. And this guy, though, like I say, you see, the one fault and the bad thing about Islam is the indoctrination in it is like with the Democrats. They say they choose truth over facts, which we heard Joe Biden say. Now, with the Muslims, they ingrain and indoctrinate them that what they're telling them is the truth and that they must honor this truth. And they do it with such veracity that the Muslims really adhere to truth of what they believe to be the truth. So that if should ever they find out the actual truth, which we have a video that will show you, they will betray everything they were told to be the truth and expose it for the lie it is, because they're really dedicated to honoring the truth. The worst thing that can happen for the Islamic states is for Muslims to become aware of the truth and the facts, because if they become aware of it, they're going to expose the lies, and they're going to do all they can to reveal it, because that is the true mission that's indoctrinated in them, to support and uphold the truth. But mind you, with the Muslims now, they're lying to them, and they're doing like the Democrats say. They're making them choose truth over facts. They don't tell them the facts that would prove that what they're telling them is lies. But they're convincing them it's the truth. They get very upset like this guy, and they're going to expose it. So let's take a listen to this guy.
Anyway, if there was occupation or not. So the problem with the Jews, that with the God of Islam, not with Muslims themselves.
Yeah. All right. And your father, there was a suicide bombing, and you point out your father just
Occupation.
wanted the destruction of the state of Israel.
Yes, the God of the Quran hates Jews anyway, if there was occupation or not. So the problem with the Jews, that with the God of Islam, not with Muslims themselves.
Yeah. All right. And your father, there was a...
What he just said, if you understand that, is that because the Muslims themselves are just the indoctrinated slaves. They're the humanity that has been indoctrinated and controlled under a totalitarian regime of the totalitarian governing of the Islamic State leaders. They indoctrinate these. So they're people, but they're brainwashed people. They don't know. And they're brainwashed to believe that the Jews, like you heard from Sandra Solomon, are evil people, and the God of their Quran, Allah, the fake God, is believed to lead them to tell them they have to hate and destroy the Jews and the Christians or any other kafar. Kafar is anybody who's not willingly to submit to that of Islam. If you don't submit to Islam and agree to be a slave to Islam, then you are the kafar. So I just want to touch that real quick with you. We're going to listen a little bit further.
Suicide bombing, you point out your father justified it. As long as he didn't do it, he felt he was justified in this.
Yes, he justified the suicide bombing, and every Hamas leader as well.
Yeah, all right. Let me ask you one thing that you said here. If I died fighting, at least I'd die and go to heaven as a martyr. You actually believe that if you killed innocent people and strapped a bomb on yourself, you believe you'd go to heaven?
Absolutely. This is what every Muslim believes. This is a promise from the highest authority in the Muslim society, that you die for the glory of the God of the Quran, you go to heaven.
And you believe you'd have 72 virgins waiting for you?
At some point, I believed, like everybody else.
So do you feel at this point you were brainwashed, you were indoctrinated?
This is not about being brainwashed. This is how people grow up. Everything around you in that society tell you. School, street, every event that is happening around is telling you those facts about Islam.
All right. How did you become a spy for Israel? You were in jail with your father at one point. and they approached you. How did you make the conversion? Because you actually wanted to kill the people that were trying to get you to spy.
You are right. This is a long story, and this is why I wrote Son of Hamas. And the story of transformation is really long.
So, like I was saying, this guy is the son of Hamas. He's wrote the book called The Son of Hamas. An incredible book, incredible story. Another great man, in my opinion, because, like I say, this is another example of a Muslim who became aware of the truth. And when he became aware of the truth, he's dedicated his life now to revealing the lies of Islam. And this guy, you talk about giving up prestige. He was in line to be like a prince, like royalty over there. He could have been like a king, like you see these Saudi princes right now with the spoils of gold, Mercedes, and what have you. He gave all that up because in the indoctrination of him, his true commitment is to the truth. And when he realized the lies, he is now at threat of being killed. His own father has warrants out for his death, for him to be killed. If he was ever to be caught anywhere by the Muslims, they'll kill him. And we're going to touch on some points about this going forward, but we're going to listen. This is the same guy here, and he speaks about some things.
I came to this conclusion when I was reading the analogy of the cave of Socrates. Prisoners in a cave, looking at a blank wall. Behind them, there is a fire. And there are people passing between the prisoners and the fire. Now the prisoners are chained from their necks to the wall behind them. And all they can see is the blank wall across from them. What they see on the walls is shadow. What Socrates says that these shadows are their reality. It's
and he's there's a little. I just wanted. He was up for me. Just wanted to hear. See, but this here is another man, another guy who was his father, his family was very high ranking among the Muslims in the Islamic states. He became aware. This is Brother Raji. He became aware of the truth of the lies of Islam, and now he is risked his life. He has to stay under an alias name and in hiding. He is here somewhere in America. I've had the privilege actually of meeting this guy too several times, briefly. It's not like I'm friends with him or nothing, but I've seen him, and he has an incredible story as well. Now, in this one here, this isn't a message to Obama. And this is about where we say, when we see Obama and we see the Democrats and what they're saying, this is from a man, mind you, raised over in the Islamic States, indoctrinated his whole life. As a matter of fact, being his father was so high up, as well as like what we just seen in the last guy, this guy was in a position to become like a leader of Hamas or a leader of one of the Islamic states. He was being prepared for that. So he knows all the secrets of everything in Islam and how they indoctrinate, teach, in the culture and the ideology of controlling that of the Islamic Muslim people as slaves. He knows everything. And he is exposing those truths now of the lies of Islam. Let's just take a quick listen to what his message was to President Obama.
Dad is an imam. I must tell you that you are wrong about ISIL.
This is a letter, a message to Obama.
Dear Mr. President, with all due respect, sir, I must tell you that you are wrong about ISIL. You said ISIL speaks for no religion. I'm a former Muslim. My dad is an imam. I spent more than 20 years studying Islam. I hold a bachelor degree in religious studies, and I'm in the middle of my master's degree in terrorism studies. I can tell you with confidence that ISIL speaks for Islam. Allow me to correct you, Mr. President. ISIL is a Muslim organization. Its name stands for Islamic State. So even the name suggests that it is an Islamic movement. Their leader, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, holds a PhD in Islamic studies. I doubt you know Islam better than he does. He was a preacher and a religious leader in one of the local mosques in Baghdad. ISIL's 10,000 members are all Muslims. None of them are from any other religion. They come from different countries and have one common denominator, Islam. They are following Islam's Prophet Muhammad in every detail. They imitate him by growing their beards, shaving their mustaches, and in the way they dress. They follow his command in the hadith to differentiate themselves from the infidels by wearing their watches on the right instead of the left hand. They implement Sharia in every piece of land they conquer. They pray 5 times a day. They have called for a caliphate, which is a central doctrine in Sunni Islam, and they are willing to die for their religion. They are following the steps of Islam's Prophet Muhammad to the letter. By the way, if you want to understand ISIL, read the oldest biography of Muhammad by Ibn Hisham. This is their model for action. You think that ISIL does not speak for Islam because they beheaded an American and they killed those whom they consider infidels. In the same way, Islam's Prophet Muhammad beheaded in one day between 600 and 900 adult males in a Jewish tribe called Banu Qurayza. In fact, beheading is commanded in the Quran in Surah 47, the 4th verse. It says, "When you meet the unbelievers in fight, smite at their necks." Ironically, this surah is called the Surah of Muhammad. Killing prisoners is also an order from Allah to Muhammad and to all Muslims. It says it is not for a prophet to have captives of war until he inflicts a massacre upon Allah's enemies in the land. Quran 8:67.
So as you can hear from this guy here, who was a former Muslim, he was raised a Muslim, his family as well is over there, and he comes from the area of where his family was actually through Arabia and Baghdad over, which would be an Iraqi area, very deep into the Islamic State and the culture and the governing authorities of it. He was as well in line to be very high ranking. He gave these things up to expose the truth. He is converted just like the other man now, and as well Sandra Solomon. They are all now Christians, and they all are in exile outside of those Islamic states, trying to do the best. Now you realize these people, all of these 3 that I've just shown you, are risking their lives. The Muslims have put death warrants on every one of their heads. They want them dead, because these people know the secrets and the truth of Islam. It's amazing, though, that these people, our government does not listen to. You can't say they're not trying. This man has done many messages directly to Barack Obama, directly to George Bush. He has been trying to reach the American government of the Democrats, but the Democrats are complicit, and they know. They turn a blind eye to these things because you know why? The Saudi Arabia royal family, that of the royal family of Iran, Iraq, these Saudi Muslims over there are sending them and contributing to their campaigns and their foundations hundreds of millions of dollars. And that's what blinds them and shuts them up. They don't care how many Americans die or how many people die in the world. They're self-serving to that, and they're treason, aiding and assisting of these enemies knowingly for the greed and the money for themselves. They don't give a damn about the American people, our nation, our posterity, because what's happening right now, our youth, with the infiltration of what's taking place right now with Islam in America, for the first time in our American history that's being allowed, is placing our American posterity, our children and our grandchildren, at great threat in the future of suffering the consequences of what we see these Muslims doing around the world, of what they have been doing now for 1,400 years. Understand, when he talks about the beheading of those men back in that Jewish commerce, back with the time of Muhammad, since the founding of Muhammad till today, an estimated 350 million innocent people have been killed in the name of Islam in their pursuit for world domination and control, and trying to force the world to submit to them and become Muslims. So 350 million people. That's all the people today. That's more than all the people in the entire country of America today have been killed in the name of Islam in the last 1,400 years. This is reality, people, that has to be faced. And these people are not changing, because the indoctrination and the teaching is what you have just heard from 3 former Muslims who were raised within the Islamic States themselves, trying to warn us, the American people, and that of the Canadian people, and that of any free people or any civilized people, of the truth of the threat of Islam. They mimic, like he says, that of the ancient time of Muhammad. from 1,400 years ago. Now, I know a lot of people today may say that's ridiculous. Hillary Clinton says it's ridiculous. Barack Obama says it's ridiculous. Many people try to say it's ridiculous. But as we progress forward, we're going to realize, no, it's not ridiculous. This was another message given to Mark Zuckerberg by this man, because of Mark Zuckerberg trying to silence the truth about people like me, trying to expose. Like, I recently got suspended on Facebook because I joined a group called Christian and Muslims Debate on Facebook, another group, it's a private group, and obviously I left the Muslims stumped about the truth of Islam, and it's caused a lot of questioning, and there was a lot of foreign Muslims in there. What I was exposing was things as what everyone here is exposing, the truth of Islam that I know. They don't want that truth to be known. That truth can result in many of those Muslims in Saudi Arabia, Iran, that may have been in that debate, seeing and becoming like these Muslims. They'll leave, and they'll start to fight to expose the lies of Islam. So it wasn't short after I made those comments that I got suspended, unrelated to that comment, because they can't do it on that ground, but they suspended me for 30 days related to a comment I made to Joe Biden when he was doing his little spiel live, which was not anything I've commented 1,000 times before and never got suspended for, but now all of a sudden it's cause for suspension. But that's the way things go. This one here is another one. This woman is an incredible woman. This is Annie Cyrus. She is an Iranian woman who escaped the Sharia law of Iran. She was raised an Islamic Muslim in Iran under Iranian control. Most Americans, it appears, are ignorant to our own history. They don't realize that back in 1978, prior to 1978 and back, Iran was an ally to America. They were called Mini America. They had a constitution near verbatim to the United States. The only lacking amendment they didn't have in the Iranian constitution was they had no Second Amendment. They didn't have a right to bear arms. And as an ally to America, and as well, they did have their own small military. But as an ally to ours, when we go back and we look under Nixon and Ford, we had agreements to defend them as allies to America. We had a good relationship with them. They were known as Mini America. And they loved, the Iranian people loved America, and they loved the American people, and the American people loved them. And we were very, very close allies until the Democrat, Jimmy Carter, refused to do anything when they were attacked and overthrown by the Muslims. And being their people were unarmed, they had no way to defend against the Muslim invasion. And within a matter of months, they succumbed to that of Sharia law. The barbarianism of what took place with the beheadings, the dismemberment of people live in the streets, what they did, the torture, the murder. I knew people as a kid when it took place in 1978, Shining Shoes in New York, that were Iranians. I knew of a man named Ian and little Ian, his son. We were friends. They were the only two of his family that survived. Sadly, his family during the invasion was over there for, I believe, his grandmother's birthday. And the invasion happened, and they would never get seen again. And I do remember that Mr. Ian, it wasn't but several weeks later that he had found out his whole entire family refused to submit to the Islamic Muslims, and they were rebelling against it. And his wife, who was pregnant at the time with would have been young Ian's sister, and his mother and his grandmother and all his aunts, uncles, everybody was killed. So him and little Ian were the only ones. And I still remember to this day that happening to him and many of the Iranian people at the time that were of the Iranian community in New York City and Newark at that time, over in East Orange. But, they were once Americans. But this is Annie Cyrus. She obviously had knowledge shared with her, because most people don't realize today there's literally millions of Iranian people who remember Iran before it was overthrown by Islam and they were enslaved as Muslims. They remember being free people just like we're free right here in America. If you want an example of what's coming to America, if we don't wake up as the American people and face the truth of what's coming, and we don't face the truth of our own government's treason and what's happening, and we allow this to happen, we will wind up what Iran is today. Because there's the perfect example of what happens to a constitutional republic that's overthrown by a totalitarian Islamic nation. Iran today is our enemy because they're a totalitarian regime, and they're under the rule of the totalitarian Islamic Muslims, who have been long established and known to be declared enemies of America and any free people in the world, of which, as we move forward, we're going to conclude the evidence of fact that our own government is aware of these things and are guilty of committing treason, and they're also guilty for that and accountable for that of near now 5,000 Americans killed right here in our own home nation, and potentially the resulting will result in the death of probably tens of thousands of more Americans going forward if we don't stop this and we allow this insanity to continue. But let's take a listen to what Annie Cyrus has to say.
Hi. As it was mentioned, as you can see, my name is Annie Cyrus, and I was born in Iran. You might know it as Iran. Quick raise of hand, how many of you are familiar with the history of Iran? Okay, we're gonna go over it quickly. Iran, until 1979, was not capital N-O-T Islamic. It was a very westernized country. It was run by Reza Shah Pahlavi and his queen. Reza Pahlavi was known to be the closest ally to America in Middle East. Also, Iran in general was known as mini America in Middle East. He made sure to have all the Western culture brought to the country, Western education at his schools and universities. He was very picky to have equal rights for man and woman. What you're looking at right now is a cover of a magazine named Woman of the Day. So, women had their own magazine, and that picture is the very last year that we actually had the beauty pageant Miss Iran. These are the lovely ladies who were on that competition. And also, Iran was known to be Israel's ally in Middle East, only ally. In 1979, there was a revolution in Iran, and the Shah of Iran decided to temporarily step down until things would be sorted out. So he left the country on a vacation and put together a temporary government. A man named Ayatollah Khomeini came along and hijacked the country. We went from this completely to this. That is Ayatollah Khomeini with his family. He came along and he promised the people of Iran free housing, free gas, free electricity. Does it sound familiar by any chance? I know, when I watch Bernie Sanders, I'm like, oh my God, deja vu. We got an American Khomeini here. Anyhow.
So as you can see here, what she's trying to tell you and what is the truth, that this is what they do with socialism. Most people don't realize that the Islamic totalitarian regimes are socialist, communist regime as we go forward. But I wanted to touch on that. Annie was a girl who was subject. She was imprisoned over there just like Sandra Solomon was. They suffered hard punishment by the Islamic Muslims and becoming aware of the truth and defying that of Islamic culture. It's amazing that these women were able to escape alive, because there are many like them. And I'm telling you, literally, in Iran right now, being that there are so many millions of Iranians still remember being free, and they teach that to their grandchildren. They try to teach them the truth and give them and keep the spirit of hope that one day they may be liberated again to be free. And sadly to say right now, in the situation we're facing with our current situation in America, with this last election, and the total distrust of the American people right now in our republic in America, by the defiance of that of a government that right now seems to be so corrupt and treasonous, it's ridiculous. And what I'm exposing to you right now is only on top of the election fraud and corruption that we see going on within our elections and that are taking place in America, that have been the fingers that put out the candle of hope for so many nations. We know during the time of Donald Trump, there was people uprising in China and as well people in Iran who are putting their life at line. These were the people who remembered freedom in Iran when they were liberated before Iran was overthrown and turned into an Islamic totalitarian regime. Those people inspired by Donald Trump in the hopes of that Donald Trump may lead the world again to liberate those who were once our allies like Iran. And literally, we are not aware that just several years ago, literally hundreds and possibly thousands of Iranians were being slaughtered in the streets of Iran because they were crying out for Donald Trump and the American people to come liberate them again, because they remembered being a free people before the overthrow. And it's sad that Donald Trump walked away and handed our nation over to the criminal establishment that is the very cause of that, because it was under the Democratic administration that Iran fell. The Iranian people pleaded and counted on America, but Jimmy Carter, Democratic president at the time, and a Democratic administration in control would do nothing to help the Iranian people. And by the time a Republican, Ronald Reagan, got in, it was too late. They had already fallen under and were under full control of the Islamic Muslims, sadly to say. And they've been under that control ever since. And they've gone from being that of our most strongest ally in the East to now our longest standing Eastern enemy, sadly. But this is the truth we have to face, people. This right here, I would like to play is Obama stating as well.
You could build a synagogue on a site. If you could build a Hindu temple on a site, then you should be able to build a mosque on the site. Now, I recognize...
Now, I wanted to play that because of what we have being said here by Andy Cyrus. Now, he says, again, I want you to listen to what he says about Islam and understand his complicity in the treason, acting as the President of the United States of America. And with the act of treason at the time, Joe Biden, the current president, is his vice president, and as well Hillary Clinton is the Secretary of State, and the entire Democratic administration is all in agreement with what he's saying right now. And I just want to play that again.
You could build a synagogue on a site. If you could build a Hindu temple on a site, then you should be able to build a mosque on the site.
So he's talking about the mosque that's wanting to be built in New York City on the site of the Twin Towers that were taken down by the Islamic Muslims. He feels it should be allowed. Yes, this is what that's about. Now I want to go into, now Andy Cyrus as well was raised in Iran under Islamic law and Sharia tenets, and she knows it just like any Islamic Muslim would raised in that nation, and she knows the meanings of all the things in relation to Islam and the so-called secrets of Islam, because those raised in the Islamic states and indoctrinated from the time they're children are being prepared to maintain that cultural ideology forward, so they have to be fully indoctrinated with the full understanding of the true Islamic teachings of the Quran, of the true Quran, of which they follow to the truest of tenets of what is exemplified in the world by the Islamic states today. So let's listen to what Andy Cyrus has to say about this.
In every state in our union, and over 1,200 mosques within our borders.
Well, the 1,200 mosques that Mr. Obama constantly refers to very proudly, what it means is that, well, basically when there's a mosque built in any area, it's not just a holy place for Muslims to go and do their prayers. No. When there is a mosque built, it's a sign of conquer. So that area has been conquered by Sharia. So come to think of it, we have 1,200 areas lost to Sharia already. Now, when he says that, a lot of people are taking it as, well, he's being fair, he's not racist, so he's a good president. No. He is referring to the fact that we are almost there. We have enough conquered area that we can just bring in more and more Muslim until this country has turned into Islamic country. The meaning of mosque, always and always, people need to remember the meaning behind the mosque. They're not a place for prayer. No. The first symbol of it is that the area has been conquered by Sharia. Secondly, a mosque is also used as a Sharia court, meaning if a husband wants to get a fatwa or any judgment on his wife, all he needs to do is walk into the mosque, the local mosque, talk to the imam, and if imam gives the judgment, he is good to go. So everybody needs to keep all of that information about mosque in mind. Every time you hear there's a new mosque being built, or if you pass by a mosque, these are the meanings behind them. A mosque could mean a real danger to the society.
Most people aren't aware of these truths. And like I say, the mosque is not like a church. It is a government building of the Islamic states. And most people aren't aware in America. And the ignorance of America is what is positioning us, the American people, to fall into the fate of that of what's thousands and thousands of people and hundreds of nations before us has befallen. You know, the Islamic Muslims with Iran, for example. Iran was under the protection of America, and Iran has a history that goes back even to the 7th century of war with the Muslims, of when Islam, since Islam has been founded. And it wasn't until the Democrats failed to maintain the security of an alliance with them, as we, the American people, were their allies. Mind you, after 1978, America had lost its trust by the world and any of our allies after the Democrats failed to defend Iran upon the invasion of the Muslims on their country. And that's why we have yet to have gained any world allies in a strong position since then. Matter of fact, we've been slowly losing allies. Like you take, for instance, one of the most strongest allies we have ever had was Australia. Australia was a nation that literally verbatim the United States Constitution in its time. It literally just took the United States off the top and put Australia. Their Constitution was verbatim, word for word, to the United States. And even after that point, we see, following the fall of Iran to the Islamic Muslims, there would be a democratic movement with that of many foreign totalitarian regimes and dictators upon Australia, where they manufactured a mass shooting so that they could strip them of the Second Amendment. The reason of this, in truth, to anybody who understands history and the facts of how these totalitarian regimes work, that was a practice move. You see, because Australia had a verbatim constitution to the United States. If they could find a way to breach the Constitution of Australia, to strip them of a Second Amendment, they could do it here in America. The only thing that's kept America free for 244 years is that the fact that the American people are the largest armed militia. Okay, we're reconnected, saying that my OBS disconnected. But anyway, to attempt to overthrow our nation because we're too armed. When they were able to disarm Australia, it set the groundwork for how they could disarm America. And this is a reality we have to face of what is taking place right now in America. Now, we were just talking about on the mosque situation. We've seen the video about Annie Cyrus with that. Now I want to go into the proof to show you what totalitarianism looks like. And when I say what it looks like is how a foreign totalitarian regime enslaves a people and keeps them indoctrinated and uneducated and aware of that, of anything of what civilization has evolved to in its understanding of technology and advancements in science and discoveries. Do you know, and I'm about to show you, that the Islamic Muslims this day teach the children and the adults grow up to adulthood because they don't have the ability to go to libraries like we do. It's a totalitarian regime. They are only allowed to learn what the Islamic leaders allow them to learn. If they're caught reading westernized books or whatever, they can have their hands cut off. And I mean literally, they do it. They will do it. So these are the punishments for doing things that are not allowed are so extreme that most would be insane to even do it because they'll do it. They'll cut your head off in public. They'll cut your feet off in public. They'll cut your hands off. They'll hang you. They'll burn you alive. The things they do, and they do it publicly to make sure that everyone aware understands you do not violate Sharia law. You do not break the law of the Islamic rulers, because if you do, you will be greatly tortured and harmed. And the fear of what happens is enough to deter people from even questioning. As you heard from Annie Cyrus, you heard from Sandra Solomon, and you heard from the other gentlemen speaking about this, who were all raised in the Islamic states. You do not question Islam or you are put to death. And it's no joke. They're not playing. But to understand, this is an actual video taken from an Islamic school. This is the way it's taught now in Iran, in Arabia, under the Islamic regimes. But these children, because of the internet now, some kids are able to gain access and they get to see things. So when they go to school, they question things. And now these kids won't be punished, but they will be directed to understand that the way of Islam is the only way, no matter what is said, that's how you learn. So let's take a quick listen here. This is a kid who has seen on the internet information about the world and seasons and things like that, and he's questioning now his Islamic imam teacher in the Islamic States. This is actually in the Islamic States. So understand, you'll have to read below because it's done in Arabic. They're speaking in Arabic, but below is the interpretation of what's... So you got to read this. So we're going to make this bigger so everybody can see what's being said, and we're going to play this.
अर्थ का डायरेक्शन दूसरी तरफ है, चांद की तरफ है। सूरज आपके मुल्क से दूर हो गया? कहाँ दूर चला गया?
वो अब है ना दूसरी डायरेक्शन में चला गया कि वो रोटेट करता रहता है, तब दूसरे मुल्कों की तो बारी आनी चाहिए ना गर्मियों के लिए।
जमीन रोटेट कर रही है
जी।
जमीन तो साकिन है बेटा, जमीन तो जमीन रोटेट करती ही नहीं है, जमीन गर्दिश नहीं करती।
लेकिन हमें ज्योग्राफी में पढ़ाया जाता है कि अर्थ जो है वो सूरज का चक्कर लगाता है।
ये लॉजिक ये गलत है बेटा। साइंस की ये थ्योरी जो है ना, ये दुरुस्त नहीं है। असल जो थ्योरी है ना वो कुरान और हदीस वाली है। और आला हजरत जो हमारे ना इमाम अहले सुन्नत आला हजरत ने ये प्रूफ किया है कि ज़मीन साकिन है, यानी ज़मीन मूव नहीं करती। साकिन को एक
So what this teacher is telling these kids, that's a lie. The earth does not move, because he is stating that the Quran says that the earth is stationary, and this is what they have to believe no matter what they hear or learn from the internet or what Western people say. They have to believe what they're told in the Quran, and that's all they can believe. And you're witnessing right now what is taking place in the teachings by a teacher to children in the Islamic states. And if you're paying attention here, he says there's a right here. You'll just pay attention to what's being said.
स्टैटिक, अर्थ स्टैटिक पोजीशन में है, ये मूव नहीं करती। और साइंस कहती है कि जमीन मूव करती है। आला हजरत हमारे इमाम अहले सुन्नत ने कुरान से साबित किया है कि जमीन मूव नहीं करती। तो हमने बात कौन सी माननी है? इस्लाम की, दीन की। आला हजरत ने इस्लाम और दीन की बात ही की है। ठीक है बेटा, और कोई क्वेश्चन है जहन में?
तो फिर हमारा सुबह के टाइम पे सूरज आ जाता है, फिर चांद आ जाता है, तो फिर ये सर्कल कैसे चलता है? सूरज और चांद तो ये तो मूव कर ही रहे ना। मतलब सूरज तो बेटा देखिए, सूरज अपनी गोल है, आपने देखा होगा ना, है? तो सूरज अपने अल्लाह के हुक्म से अपना जो भी इसका साइकिल है उसके साथ वो मूव कर ही रहा है। तो जहाँ जहाँ सूरज मूव कर रहा होता है वहां पर उसके टाइमिंग के साथ वो चीजें चल रही होती है ना। तो ये सूरज और चांद की जो गर्दिश है, ये सूरज और चांद का जो आना जाना है, अब सूरज और चांद को यूं समझे कि सूरज गुरूब हो जाता है। जैसे हमारे यहाँ से सूरज गुरूब हो गया तो कहीं तो सूरज तुलू हुआ ना बेटा, जी जी,
सूरज नजर आ कहीं, तो ये कहीं चांद सूरज ये सब अल्लाह ताला के हुक्म से अपने वक्त के साथ इनका निज़ाम चल रहा होता है। हमने अभी के एपिसोड में, आज के इस सिटिंग में सिर्फ इस बात को याद कर लेना है, हम इसके भी डिटेल में नहीं जाते। ठीक है, हमारा टॉपिक आज साइंस और अर्थ नहीं है। हम इंशाल्लाह कभी किसी दिन साइंस और अर्थ पर इंशाल्लाह हम अपना प्रोग्राम करेंगे। ठीक है बेटा, लेकिन आज चूंकि एक बात चली थी कि सूरज हमारे कहाँ से हो गया, जमीन से दूर हो गया, ठीक है, और आपने जैसे इन्होंने कहा कि जमीन अर्थ रोटेट कर रही है, तो ये चूंकि अभी हमने शुरू में डिस्कशन हुई तो ये चीजें दुरुस्त नहीं है। जमीन साकिन है, जमीन अपनी जगह पर रुकी हुई है। और यही इस्लाम का नजरिया, किसका नजरिया बेटा? इस्लाम का नजरिया है। और हमने इसी नजरिए को ही याद भी करना है और इसी पर हमने अपना यकीन रखना है।
So as you see there, what he is saying
दूसरा सवाल है
is,
ठीक है बेटा, और यही इस्लाम का नजर।
What he's saying that what Islam says is the truth no matter what. You see, this is kind of like the Democrat Joe Biden, what he says about they choose truth over facts. This guy don't want these kids listening to no facts. He says what the Quran says and what Islam says is all they are to believe. So you understand, this is a full-grown man who believes what he's saying too, because he was indoctrinated and raised this way. And this is modern time, as you can see this. This is current time teaching of how they indoctrinate the enslaved Muslims. And they raised them to be indoctrinated slaves to Islam and believe these fallacies of this idiocy of which today we know. But the reason why is, like I say, totalitarianism, to control them. They don't want them to know the truth of the world. And it gets even out there even worse. Now, this guy is a doctor in the Islamic States. He's an actual medical doctor. And he's also considered to be a scholar of Islam because of his age and his study. He has grown up his whole life understanding the Quran, and he believes that from the teachings of the Quran that the earth is flat. So let's take a listen to this.
والآية اللي قرأتها قبل لحظة أنه جنة عرضها السماوات والأرض، فهذه دللت على أنه الأرض هي مسطحة.
إن لم تكن الأرض كروية فما هو شكلها؟ أنا عندي ثابت اليوم نتيجة التطور العلمي بالأقمار الصناعية وبالوسائل الحديثة المركبات الفضائية، ثبت أن خاصة بعد أن وجدت مركبات فضائية والمكوكات اللي تدور باستمرار حول الأرض واللي غادرت قسم من عندها الأرض إلى المجموعة الشمسية، أكدت الصور الناتجة على أن شكل الأرض كروي عند سطح البحر عند ظهور السفينة.
I'm just showing these things so you can understand that this is, what I'm saying is not a lie. The indoctrination of totalitarianism is real.
على شاطئ البحر فتشاهد أنت من بعد، لكن أي بعد منهم؟ البعد الوضوحي. فالبعد التلاشي لا ترى فيه شيء، وإنما بعدين لما تتقرب السفينة شيئا فشيء نحو الشاطئ أو المركب فتشاهد من عندها ما ارتفع منها. كيف تشاهدها؟ لأنه العين مثل ما قلنا احنا هي ما حد لها ما توصلوا إلى علم العين.
As a medical doctor, understand too, we allow a lot of these people to come in with their medical degrees from over there. This guy is saying that doctors have not understood how the eye works under the Islamic belief, because the Islamic teachings teach him that the eye is what deceives you to think the world is round. So they can't teach them the truth of us knowing the true function of the eye, because if we do, he'll realize that the way they're indoctrinating him is wrong and it's a lie. He'll become like the other people. You see, because once they're exposed to truth and it's undeniable to them, they're going to become very strong advocates to expose the lies. Because that's one of the greatest danger of Islam is the indoctrination of them honoring truth. To that whenever they see something as being a lie, that no matter what they believe, they're going to expose the lie and accept the truth. So understand that's how when we see the other people like Annie Cyrus or Sandra Solomon or Brother Rajid, these people see the truth, and because of the long ingrained doctrination of believing the truth, and that they have to hold on to the truth, and that everything in their life is about the truth, of what their truth turns out to be a lie, they'll expose that lie. So this guy is believing the earth is flat because the Quran says so. It goes even further than with him. We're going to go on to here. This is another guy who is questioning about if the earth is fixed or if it moves. And understand, this is a man who, this guy here is a very highly respected imam, teacher, scholar, scientist of the Islamic Muslims out of the Islamic states. So I want you to pay attention to what it says here, because this guy examples the totalitarianism indoctrination of the dumbing down of the Islamic Muslims. And understand, they believe this stuff because it's all they're allowed to know. It's not that this man is stupid. It's not that he's an idiot. It's just that this is the indoctrination since he was a child. As you've seen those children in the school being indoctrinated. And understand the fear of his parents, that if he doesn't adhere to what he's being told, he'll be killed publicly. They'll make an example of him. He can't defy it. So everybody instills that this is the way it has to be, out of fear, because that's what Islam is. It's a culture of fear, terrorism, and war, and death and murder. That's all it is. And the only one who benefits from the Islamic culture is that of the Islamic imams and rulers of the Islamic states, the leaders, because they control and manufacture all the chaos and the insanity of the totalitarianism that the enslaved Muslims are all subject to. The people are nothing but slaves to those people. And as you heard already and realize, they'll even strap bombs to you, send you off to die. They determine when you live, how you'll live, what your religion is, when you'll pray, what you'll eat, how you'll dress, what you can learn, what you can't learn, what you can say, what you can't. It's full totalitarianism. Okay? And we're going to learn even more in depth by them themselves, because they're going to be the ones to tell you, not just my opinion. I'm going to use all I can of their own culture and teaching so you understand why these people are our enemies, why they have been long established to be our enemies, why they are such a great threat to us. Because if you heard, and as you're going to continue hearing, we are the kafar that you hear them talking about must be destroyed and killed off the earth. So just pay attention to what this guy is saying.
هل الأرض ثابتة أم تتحرك؟ ثابتة ولا تتحرك؟ الحقيقة الذي عليه علماؤنا كالشيخ الإمام عبد العزيز بن باز والشيخ صالح الفوزان حفظه الله تعالى أن الأرض ثابتة لا تتحرك، وهذا هو مقتضى النصوص ومقتضى العقل أصلا، والأدلة أيضا كثيرة عن الشمس التي تدور. الأدلة العقلية بارك الله فيك.
I don't know if you've seen that. It says here by Quranic teachings, there is ample Quranic evidence that it is the sun that revolves around the earth. So the Quran tells them this.
الأدلة العقلية
as for evidence based on reason.
بارك الله فيكم. أنكم تقولون أنهم النظريات.
The Western present all kinds of theories. So what we say are theories.
ما أدري كيف. حتى نحن عندنا نظريات وعندنا عقول كمسلمين.
But we Muslims also have theories and brains.
أولا نحن الآن في أين؟ نذهب إلى مطار الشارقة. نريد أن نذهب إلى الصين بالطيارة. واضح؟ ركزوا معي. هذه الأرض إذا قلتم أنها تدور، إذا خرجنا من مطار الشارقة برحلة دولية إلى الصين، الأرض تدور صح؟ طيب لو وقفت الطائرة في السماء أليست الصين تأتي؟ صح ولا لا؟ تدور تأتي الصين ولا ما تأتي؟ طيب لو كانت الشمس الأرض تدور هكذا، لو تمشي الطيارة ما أدري كم.
You understand what he's saying, right? You see this.
تمشي لازم تستطيع أن تلحق الصين، لأن الصين تدور وأنت تدور.
Now understand, this is a mature grown man. This man is really not a stupid man. This is what happens when you allow a totalitarian regime to take over people and enslave them and control every aspect of their life under totalitarianism. They indoctrinate and raise these people from, as we've seen, of what I've been showing you in past videos here. We go back to the time of the children here. As you see here, the teachers and how they're teaching the children. Of which we're going to go forward into other things. You see, this is I'm just trying to explain to you the truth. Now, the other thing of which I mentioned too, I want to just touch on. In Africa, those of historians in Africa, black Africans themselves have done in-depth study on the research now. There's areas in Africa that are Christian, and they're free, and they're allowed to have free study. And those people with the ability to have the liberation of freedom have been able to indulge in their own history and to disclose the facts of the truth of history. This right here is a short clip I just want to play about something, and where this was a book written by a man I read, was fascinating. It was a black African man who's an African historian with doctorates in the history of African culture and what he has to say. So I'm just going to play a quick clip of this so you understand. This goes back to what we're talking about, the fallacy. As you see the fallacies in the teachings here, what they do to indoctrinate the Islamic Muslims with the totalitarianism, understand that same totalitarian ideology is what's used on the Nation of Islam black Americans to fool them about what they believe. And I just want to touch on base for them to understand they might want to read this book.
Thousands of children have disappeared, hidden away by radical Muslims seeking to create a new generation void of any Christian faith. Christian men who refuse to submit to the Islamic movement have been imprisoned, beaten, and oftentimes mutilated. Others have been hung, nailed to trees, or drowned in the River Nile.
I must admit that I too, among hundreds of millions of educated people, was under the impression that the African slave trade was the sole responsibility of the Christian Europeans, the white race. That is, until I started exploring the subject in greater depth, and especially after reading an incredibly enlightening book called The Legacy of Arab Islam in Africa by John Alambila Azuma.
This book is written by a black African man who's an historian. It's an incredible book about the truth of the facts of the Islamic infiltration into Africa, of which I was speaking about earlier, in their invasion in 640 AD, and where they enslaved the black Africans and start the black African slave trade. That's in 640 AD. That's 1,200 years before the continent of America is even being developed by the Europeans, or 1,200 years before the transatlantic slave trade happens. 1,200 years. 1,200. It's 1,200 years before. So understand, the black African slave trade started way before the continent of America even existed on the earth. You know, and this is what I'm trying to say. This is a fact of truth. And even that of the black Africans, the actual real black Africans in Africa know this, more so than that of the ignorant black Africans right here in America. The black Americans are ignorant that they don't even know this because, and it's not that they're stupid. It's not that they don't have the ability to learn. They're indoctrinated in the very same way as what we see here with the indoctrinated Islamic totalitarian regimes of what they're doing to the Islamic Muslims who are enslaved by them under the control of the Islamic States. The black Africans here are indoctrinated the same way. But let's listen to what he has to say here.
My whole perspective and understanding has changed dramatically, and I would like you to tell us more about this subject.
The success of Muhammadan Islam in deceiving, misinforming, deforming, and contorting both history and reality over a period of almost 1400 years has been astounding. That is, until now. The greatest tragedy about this particular subject is that most of the descendants of African slavery, the black people in the Americas, around the world, as well as among the African blacks, are totally ignorant of the actual facts. Before we lose the concentration of our listeners, I would like to make the following statement and then prove it. That the worst, most inhumane and most diabolical institution of the black African slave trade was initiated, refined, perpetrated, and implemented by the Mohammedan Arabs and later aided and abetted by the black converts to Mohammedan Islam. I predict that, as usual, the two subcultures, those of denial of facts and of political correctness, will attack us without once disproving a single statement and or conclusion that we make. Slavery was not created by the white races, because it has existed throughout the human history and practiced by every tribe, culture, civilization, racial group, and religion. In fact, the very word slavery has its root in the name Slav, based upon the Slavic peoples of Europe who were subjugated by other Europeans. It is not common knowledge that the Arabic word abd is synonymous with the meaning of slave. For example, Abdullah means literally the slave of Allah, and that in the language of the Arabs, all black peoples are called abid, plural, for slaves. While much...
So as you can hear here, I'm just trying to tell you, this is of an African historian himself, of a black African man, of their own. This is not American culture of history. That book is written by a black African historian who has done in-depth study as a black African of their own history. So this is not my opinion of the things I've been stating. Now, we're going to move ahead here. I want to show you what happens, because a lot of people don't understand. Like we've seen with the adults, we've seen with those of Andy Cyrus and Sandra Solomon, Brother Raji, the former prince of Hamas, of how, and then we've seen the teacher, how he indoctrinates the children. We've seen that of doctors, we've seen that of scholars on how they believe this ideology. Now, I'm going to show you what happens, because this is off of a true story of a man who, there was a book written by a man who done in-depth studies on what was the truth of Islam, and he had written a book called The People versus Muhammad. And in this book, it lays out a lot of the facts of which I laid out in my video on the lies of the Nation of Islam, which a link will be included here, about where, with their own writings, their own Quran, it is proven that Allah is a fake God and all of Islam is fake. And it shows the truth of the fallacy of the totalitarianism and how they indoctrinate that. And this guy here is, like I say, you got to understand that these people who are Muslims is what you'll hear from like the prince of Hamas, the son of Hamas, like he says, you know, the Muslims are people, they're humans. And this is all they know. This is their, and like you heard from Andy Cyrus, you heard from Brother Raji, you heard from Sandra Solomon, and you've heard from the people speaking about this. It's like every day of their life. This is what they're indoctrinated with. The society in the Islamic State is a constant indoctrination of the public, of the enslaved Muslims. The whole process of the 5 times a day prayer, returning to the mosque, is a constant pattern of indoctrination and brainwashing to keep them to the point where the whole entire structure of every day of all society and every event of what they do in life is controlled by the Islamic rulers and leaders of the totalitarian Islamic states. And they're constantly in a constant motion of indoctrination. But the main thing about it is, the tenets of it is that truth, to believe the truth of what they're being told. As you hear the Democrats being saying by Joe Biden, they choose truth over facts. The Muslims hide all the facts of anything in the evolution and understanding of advancements in technology or humanity from these people. They keep them trained and restricted within the communities of the Islamic States, and they control them. They indoctrinate them to believe, like you heard, when the one guy was questioning about, you would blow yourself up, and he's like, yeah, well, you grow up your whole life being told these fallacies and these insane ways of life, and you're taught this insane medieval way of belief, and it's all you know, it's what you believe, because that's the truth you've been told, that's what you believe. You're deprived of facts and the knowledge of understanding of the evolution of humanity and its advancements in technology. When you're deprived of those things, you don't know them. In our own world, had 100 years ago, you told people that we would have planes and helicopters, they would think you were insane. They would think you were insane. And this is just what you've got to understand, that these people are living back 1,400 years ago and they're believing things they were taught 1,400 years ago. But when you have the people, like I said, they're not stupid, they're not retarded, they're not dumb people. They're just brainwashed and indoctrinated people. But when the truth gets exposed to them, and they have the self-reasoning of logic, of which we're all born with by God, to know the self-evident of logic, of reason. And when we can't deny it, it's in our face. We react to it with reality. And this man here is a man who read this book, that is The People versus Muhammad. And this is the reaction of what he was a news reporter. And I believe, if I understand in part, the story was he was not supposed to read this book. It's been banned in their countries because they don't want the people there. But he did, and he got a copy of the book, and he read the book. And we're going to see what his reaction was on actual Islamic news in the Islamic States. And he did this on live TV, and it's my understanding this man is dead now. He was killed for this. Because what he did was considered blasphemy and treason against the Islamic States. So he was literally, I believe, killed because of what he did here on this this news show from this. I'm just trying to correct something real quick. I have an issue going on with the camera acting up. Okay, I think we have it. There we go. Okay, so we're gonna watch this now.
هو مش عارف انه هيروح لربنا، مش هيلاقي محمد بديع جنبه ولا خيرت الشاطر، هيدفن في بيت يجيب له ايه اكتر من 33 مليون في الشارع، ما بيشوفوش امي، مش عارفين اللي حصل في البلد بسببهم، قعدوا يتكلموا عن مؤامرات، بيكلمني عن ايرادات في الخارج والداخل، هو اللي بعت لي بريك وبعت لاوباما ويحترم الامريكان. هذا الرجل ما فيش راجل قاعد في الدنيا رئيس جمهورية يطلع تعبه يحس انصاره علينا، هو عاوز يقتتل صباحا كل دم حرام، كل دم بعد الوطن حرام، وتعمل محمد مرسي عيطوا يا جماعتي غير ما يمشي محمد مرسي، ما فيش وطن شريف غير ما يدخل في ميادين. احنا مرات نخرج الناس من دلوقتي ما كناش عاوز نخرجهم زي ما محمد مرسي عمل. ايه الهبل ده؟ ايه الجنان ده؟ دي مؤسسة صاحبة 7000 طن حضارة، حرام عليهم. ايه الجنان اللي شفناه ده؟ ايه الهبل والجنان ده؟ انا بقول لكم المصريين، لو فيكم راجل شريف بيحب هذا الوطن عليه انه ينزل الشارع، ما يرجعش غير لما محمد مرسي يمشي. كنا بنقول لحد امبارح او من ساعات عليه انه هو،
انا خايفه
عليه انه هو
استاذ ايهاب ثواني بس عشان خاطري،
عليه انه
انا
هو
خايفه بس عليه
يدعو الانتخابات. هذا الرجل انتهى وجماعته انتهت، ومصر مقبره الارهاب والتطرف انتهت خلاص. وخصومه الاسلام
عشان انت عندك القلب يا ايهاب.
ما شفناش واحد منهم من قاداتهم يخرجون في الشوارع يطلع هو
ده هتموت كده، هتموت كده، ما يستاهلش والله.
الجيش والشرطه والشعب يجيب له اكتر من 33 50 مليون
عشان خاطر
شرعي
اهدى انا خايفه عليك والله.
الدستور وحياته
اهدى بس
يبقى عمل ايه الدستوري؟ حرام 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 حرام.
طب خلاص ممكن تهدى عشان.
So as you can see, this is the reaction. And I can understand this man's reaction. Imagine your whole life, you grow up a child, you're indoctrinated, you don't know. You're only allowed to know certain things. You believe these things, and then all of a sudden, imagine what it must be like to be that man. Imagine. And that's what I imagine right now with me. I grew up my whole life wanting to know the truth. That's all I care about. I didn't even start to attend school really seriously until I was 13 years old. But I taught myself to read when I was 5, pictorially. And I read all my life, and everything I know is self-educated. And because of America, I was able to do that. As an American, I was privileged to do that. By my God-given inalienable rights, I was able to, since I was a child, seek and learn the truth. I don't want to wind up, and I don't want my grandchildren or my children or your grandchildren to wind up an indoctrinated idiot that is blinded from the truth of humanity and the evolution of time and the understanding of what we have evolved to, and understanding the truth of what Almighty God Himself has blessed this nation so greatly with. We all have to wake up and face the truth of what is taking place. Because right now in America, many are falling into the indoctrination of the social media. Many are falling into the indoctrination of the lies of the social media. Many are falling into the disbeliefs of these things, and we're not questioning the things to find the truth. We're not even asking of the truth. When you think of the divisive nature in this nation right now in America, what's going on with our election, the disbelief of the people, I assure you, I know, there are millions of Americans awake like me. There are millions of Americans I notice. Thank God, that's my only faith in humanity that I have, is knowing that there are millions, around 14.5 million I'm aware of, fully awake of what I'm telling you. And I'm making this video hopefully that the American people, of those who are blind and who are not paying attention to the truth and have fallen into the indoctrination, I challenge you all. I challenge you all. Question everything I'm saying. Seek and do your own due diligence. And if you can prove anything I'm saying to be a lie, there's a comment box below. State your facts. Let's debate this. Let's talk about this. And let's come to facing the truth. Because we have to face the truth. Because right now, as I speak, and what's going on right now under the Democratic administration, with the current administration and president of our nation, and that of our own entrusted government committing treason, willfully and wantonly and knowingly, is placing that of tens of thousands of American lives at risk right now, for an onslaught that could take place in our own nation if we don't stop it now and get things under control. It's what's going to happen. Understand now, we're going to go forward with this. For the black American who has been being indoctrinated, deprived of proper education, understand, you're complaining about slavery that was abolished in this nation 160 years ago. And in truth, America has nothing to do with slavery whatsoever. Does the United States of America have anything to do with slavery? And understand, it's never been a black or white issue with anything. It's a humanity issue. But your complaint about slavery, of what you're talking about here, took place 160 years ago. I want to show you what's taking place right now in the Islamic states. Because understand, in the Islamic states this very day, slavery is still allowed. Under Sharia law of the Islamic tenets, slavery is permissible. And as that man just told you recently, that Abib means black slave. It's black. All blacks are referred to as Abib. And even a Muslim slave, a Muslim black man, is a second class. To the point of, understand, the law of Sharia states that if a white Arab Muslim kills a black Muslim, he can't be charged. That's okay. But if a black Muslim kills a white Arab, he will be put to death because you're a second class citizen. You are a free Muslim, but you're still a Abib. You're still servant to that of the white Muslim, because they are the founders of Islamic racism. They are the true superiorist of white racism, is the Arab white. They're the ones over 1,400 years ago established the first. When you read the Bible, like today, people don't know, was Jesus white or black? They don't really know. Was Muhammad, they say Muhammad, we know Muhammad was white because they make sure to point that out. They're the founders of racism. It's the first ideology to ever distinguish people by their skin color. It's the first ideology to have in any kind of religious text, that of skin color. We don't know of Abraham, Moses, we don't know the color of any of them because they never speak of color until Islam emerges on the face of humanity. Islam is the first ideology to separate and divide people by skin color. And once we see this kind of totalitarianism of ideology come forward, all the way up to where we get to the point of like World War II, where we see Hitler trying to use it to the extremity of literally hair color and eye color, blonde hair, blue eyes being the superior race. This is how much idiocy it goes to with totalitarianism and how far they'll take it. It's just amazing. And you want to talk about even a further ignorance of idiot, Hitler had black hair and brown eyes. So he wasn't even considered to be among his own declared perfect race. Talk about idiocy, right? But let's listen to this.
A man addressing an unseen crowd. Big strong boys for farm work, he says. 400.
Elon Musk is about to shock the world, and it could mean big
I
things
have no
for
control.
investors
This is all
who
being
make
done
their
live,
move.
people. I have no control over it.
700. 800. The numbers roll in. These men are sold for 1,200 Libyan pounds, $400 a piece. You are watching an auction of human beings. Another man, claiming to be a buyer. Off camera, someone asks, what happened to the ones from Niger? Sold off, he's told. CNN was sent this footage by contact. After months of working, we were able to verify the authenticity of what you see here. We decided to travel to Libya to try and see for ourselves. We're now in Tripoli, telling us that there are 1 to 2 of these auctions and see if we can get some sort of access to it. We've agreed not to divulge the location to look for a missing person. Adjust our secret count. Same night. Crouched. 400. 500. 550.
So I'm just going to end it right there. They're actually having black African slave trades where they're selling black Africans right now in the Islamic states legally under Sharia law. And you're complaining about slavery that was taking place. Understand, the black African has been indulged into slavery for now 1,400 years since Islam has been around. America is not the founders of black slavery. The white man's not the founder of black slavery. It has been around since 640 AD. It was started and it still exists around the world outside of America's borders. And it's reality. You're being indoctrinated with lies, and you need to come to understand the truth. And we all need to become, as Americans, aware of the truth and face this truth and unify as the people, because we're the only thing going to be able to save our nation. We have to wake up to the reality. This right here is another, just a video in short that explains where a man is explaining how the Jews are evil and their malice. That they're the enemies. So I just want to put, not only Christians, but the Jews. They teach and they practice this stuff. This right here I want to explain to you too. So you understand. As you can see, this is a video, so it's in our time. Okay? When you want to know what goes on in a mosque, like I said, the mosque is an indoctrination station. It's where the totalitarian governing regime of the Islamic foreign nations indoctrinate that of the enslaved Muslims, why they have to attend 5 times a day, they have to come and they have to pray, and they get indoctrinated, and this is all they know, and it's driven and brainwashed into them day in and day out. When you have what's called the kafar, which is non-Muslims, we would be Americans, kafar, Christians are kafar, Jews are kafar, anybody who's not a Muslim is kafar, or an infidel. And what they'll do is they can use tiaka, which is the word for lying, deception, of what we heard about from Sandra Solomon and others, as you remember, if you recall in the beginning of this video, where they were talking about tiaka and the methods of how they deceive the kafar. And this here is called Undercover Mosque. And in this video here, we've seen where there was a group of Christians in another video prior, and they were telling them how everything is like of the abrogated Quran, which we heard about from Sandra Solomon, about how the abrogated Quran, the nice, everything's good and inclusive. And then after they leave, this is the teachings now they go back to, and they don't understand that there's somebody who's secretly in there recording them to see how it changes up between when they have the Christians there and the people who they're saying that they're teaching inclusiveness in the mosque, and then when they leave, because they allowed this to just perpetrate the fraud that they're doing, they allowed these people to come in and witness, and they were teaching the old Quran, the abrogated one, and then when they leave, they don't realize there's one among them who is actually recording still what is going on after the people who are fooled leave. So let's listen to what they teach then.
But he's Muslim and he get out of Islam. He doesn't want any more. What are we going to do? Just kill him.
So you understand what she said? If you are a Muslim and you leave Islam, what do? You kill them. This is apostasy. The punishment is death. Though they deny this off screen, they'll deny this out in public. They'll deny, Hillary Clinton will deny this. She'll just say, oh no, that's propaganda. But you see, this is the undercover what they teach in the mosque that no one's supposed to know about. This is the secrets of the truth. And this is the facts.
Yeah, how to kill. You have to kill. You understand? We're talking about Islam. For the had the zina, what is the law? Until he died. And the one who is not married, now, with 100, if someone make themselves like a man, a woman like a man, they understand this, the punishment is kill them.
And what she's saying here is like with homosexuality. If you make yourself like a man, a woman makes herself like a man, or a man makes herself, you kill them. That's the punishment of Islam. They'll deny this off camera, but this is what they teach. And they indoctrinate the children and the people and the adults 5 times a day, day in and day out, in the mosque all the time. This is the indoctrination station of what goes on. That's the government center of indoctrination. Right here in America, every mosque, this is what they're learning. This is what they're being told. And the remainder of what you hear, you should be paying close attention to and understand. If you're an American, if you're a Christian, if you're a Jew, you're a Hindu, you're a Buddhist, you are the kafar. You understand? You are kafar. So let's listen to what they say.
Place. I'm not going to be like animals, living like animals. Or to be like the people of Lut, we have to take the had. The had is to kill them.
Then we reduced him to the lowest of the low. So if you throw someone off a mountain, you are reducing him to the lowest of the low because they fall him off, I think.
It's not enough that you worship Allah, we have to also, in our heart, hate what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, please to Allah, and love what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hate what displeases to Allah, especially when living with this country that's non-Muslim.
Verily, we are free from you, and whatever you worship besides Allah, we have rejected besides Allah, we have rejected.
I want you to understand what she just said there.
This country that's non.
Especially when living in this country with that of non-Muslims. Kafar. See, you have to hate, they have to hate the kafar. Listen to what she's saying.
Verily, we are free from you, and whatever.
Verily, we are free from you and whatever you worship beside Allah. So pay attention. We have rejected you, and there has appeared between us and you hostility and hatred forever. See, understand, forever. There's no, this is what they're, you got to understand. We got to wake up to this truth and face this reality, people. Until you believe in Allah alone. Meaning, and this is what we're going to find out. We've known this in our history since the beginning of our nation's founding, that this is the way it is. Everyone has to, according to the tenets of Islam, the whole world must submit to Islam and become slaves of Muslims. Muslims are submitted slaves to the rulers of Islam. All must come. The goal is world domination and control, with totalitarianism under the rule of Islam, which we know is not under any true God. We've already proven that. I would hope people understand we've already proven this. So it's a totalitarianism organization of a sect, of a regime, is what they're doing. So and until you believe in Allah alone. So let's listen to what she's saying, because this is what's taught in every mosque in America and around the world. This is a fact.
You understand, sister? Islam is التبرع من الشرك وأهل the people who do the shirk. Any questions? To be good friends, give them all about our secret. You understand? You don't have to be friends with them. That is not allowed. Because wala is only to Muslim, not to the Kafir.
And the message of
You understand what she says right here? Because loyalty is only to the Muslim, not to the kafar. So they can deceive and lie to you. The loyalty only lies with, you got to understand the truth of these things and understand the tenets that these people have been practicing for 1,400 years and how serious they are about this stuff. It's because you know what? Like I said, 350 million innocent people have died in the name of Islam in 1,400 years. 350 million people. And in the last 20 years, nearing now 5,000 Americans killed right here on our own home ground. We need to wake up to this and stop this insanity now. Listen to this.
And the message, the Quran, came to confirm the truth in the previous scriptures. And we feel.
See, now I want you to understand here. You see that they emphasize this here. Came to confirm the truth. Truth is a main principle of indoctrination, but only the truth they want them to believe. Now, if they learn of the facts, the whole thing of the truth, you're going to hear a lot. This is what deceives a lot of people to think. They're like, well, these people are so infatuated with the truth. But understand, the truth that they've been indoctrinated with is lies. And they believe that to be the truth. And they honor that truth above all things. But what, like you see these people who were showing, exposing the lies of Islam, that's also the danger to Islam, is that when these people are revealed to the true truth, they will go after that lie to prove that lie. The same way that they will go, what they believe now to be the truth, they will die for that, what they believe to be the truth. It's the same. The truth is the true because God is the truth. God is the truth. And that's what we need to do. Because we need to understand too, Muslims are humans. They are people. They are victims of this totalitarian ideology that is indoctrinating and brainwashing them with these lies. But these are humans. These are people too. And if we can awaken these people to the truth, trust me, like you see, we have allies in Brother Rajiv, the son of Hamas, Sandra Solomon, Annie Cyrus. When these people are awoken to the truth, they will become allies to that truth. And they will deal with that of their own, the liars of these foreign totalitarian regimes. But waking them up to that truth is the thing we have to do. And we have to, because right now the battle is that truth of the lies is trying to indoctrinate America. And it's working. The majority of the black Americans who fall into the indoctrination of the Nation of Islam are becoming as well allies with them in the army they're trying to build on our own home ground right here, which could result in the deaths of tens of thousands, if not possibly potentially millions of Americans right here, if we don't get control and stop this now. Because it's happened before. History reflects how long and how many, like I said, 350 million people killed in the name of Islam in the last 1,400 years. Just within the last 100 years. Hundreds of thousands killed within the last several years only. What's taking place around the world with the thousands killed. We're going to look over and see the actual events of this as we move forward. But let's finish listening to what this woman is saying.
Confirm the truth in the previous scriptures. And we feel nothing sometimes going past the church. We don't look at it and discuss and think, subhanAllah, what are these people doing in there? What they say with their tongues is so vile and disgusting. It's an abomination. He shouldn't just be indifferent and say things like, you go to church, I go to the mosque. Let's all stay together like one big happy family and all be united as humanity. This is false. This does not work. This concept is a lie. It's fake and it's a farce.
When she sees a Kafir woman, a big smile. When she turns around, she sees me there. Yeah. It's part of Islam, of the aqeedah, of the correct belief, that you love those who love Allah, and that you hate those who hate Allah. Okay.
Did you hear what she said? You love those that love Allah, you hate those that hate Allah. See, and anybody who is not a Muslim, they consider hates Allah. So everyone who's not a Muslim is hated by every Muslim. Understand, there is no such thing as a moderate Muslim. All Muslims believe, follow, learn, teach the same exact thing. And the whole thing of moderate Muslim over non-terrorist Muslim, these are all just tiaka lies. These are sects. This is how they've been able to maintain for 1,400 years. They divide themselves up into lying sects so that the sect that says, oh no, we don't agree, they get to live and they know what they're doing. It's all under deception, the same as what you're seeing taking place right here. So just pay attention, people. We got to wake up and face this truth.
Allah, and that you hate those who hate Allah. Okay.
The Quran says, we made of you peoples, different shu'ub, to know one another. And if you communicate with the other and you show the beauty of Islam, then then maybe people could come into Islam.
It doesn't mean that we should oppress them. It doesn't mean that we don't give the right. It doesn't mean that we don't help them. It doesn't mean as well that we should be present.
There's some condition that can take you into the kufr, to take the British citizenship. Whether you like it or not, for these people you are selling your religion for. It's a very serious thing. It is not allowed to give allegiance to other than Allah.
Is that befitting for Muslims that he should reside in the land of evil, the land of the Kufar, the land of the disbelief? A Muslim should emigrate to a Muslim country.
But that was just like so you understand some of that. We're going to move on here now. This woman here is of the Nation of Islam in America. And what she is speaking at is a lecture of the Nation of Islam in America. And she is speaking about what the Muslims have to do. Now understand, the Islamic true Arabian Muslims love the Nation of Islam because they are very good Habib. And I know from living among a Muslim majority population and watching the Muslims do what they do in their conversions and how their tactics of what they do and listening to that of what at the time where I was for near 2 years, I had access to several imams who were in that place from Arabia, 2 of them from Iran, and 1 of them from Qatar. And they were all white imams who explained to me and were trying to entice me to become a Muslim and telling me how if I became a Muslim, because they thought possibly because they assumed that most Americans are racist. And they assumed possibly I was a racist. And they were telling me on how if I was to become a Muslim, I would be able to be a true Muslim because I'm white. And that in their country, I could still own black slaves. And they weren't lying. And at the time, I was thinking like, God, this is real. This is real. Okay? And I'm not a racist. I'm not a racist. I don't give a damn about. I'm a true constitutional Republican American. I believe in republicanism of what our nation was founded upon, that all men are created equal, and that's my tenets and my beliefs. And but I learned directly from actual true Islamic Muslims of the ideology of the things I'm sharing with you. And I'm telling you right now, they use the black Americans through the Nation of Islam. If you want to go watch the link I have for the lies of the Nation of Islam, if you're a black American, go to my Facebook page, watch that video, and it's very eye-opening and awakening, and everything in it, like I say, and I challenge everybody in that video, if you can disprove anything I'm saying in there, there's a comment box below, you go ahead and have your best shot at it. I'll be waiting to hear from you. But I know one thing, if you do your due diligence, you're going to find out everything I state, and that's the truth. And hopefully it wakes you up to realize that you are actually aiding and assisting not only the enemies of America, but your own enemies that intend to enslave you again should things turn out to the worst case scenario of the direction things are heading right now with our own treasonous government taking us there, of what sadly the majority of black Americans are supporting that political establishment of the Democrats who are taking us there right now, committing these acts of treason, and are the cause of right now up nearing 5,000 Americans being killed right here on our own home ground, and tens of thousands of Americans in the related wars in relation to these things, that of our own politicians who we entrust in our own government at our own selfish desire and greed, have allowed and knowingly took part and participated in aiding and assisting for that of what has resulted in tens of thousands of Americans being killed in foreign countries abroad in these wars that are being constructed and manufactured by that of these totalitarian regimes and that of our own government being complicitness with them for these things. It's just disgraceful. But let's listen to this woman.
Address. And while our final objective is not just to become part of the system that we experience now and that we see, our final objective is to create our own Islamic systems, and not only create Islamic systems for Muslims, but to look at all the other people who are sharing this country with us as potential Muslims. And if we look at them as potential Muslims and feel that we have the obligation, which Allah has told us, to try to bring them into the same style of thinking, into the same way of behaving, into the same objectives that we have, then we have to have some way that we can communicate with them and some way we can work with them. And in that long-range process of making America Muslim, all of America Muslim, then we have to have some actual short-range goals. We have to have some way of dealing with them and know how we're going to deal with them and in which ways, and be very calculated about it, or else we will not accomplish our goals.
So you understand what she's saying? This is this is taking place in, they're actually, as you see those numbers, this is an FBI recorded file thing on the indoctrination, so our government is aware of their tactics. Our government, of our elected and trusted officials, are aware of their intent and their goal. And right now, anyone in America knows, and anyone whose children are coming home from school knows, they are being indoctrinated in the public school system because, as I said, the treason doesn't only extend up with Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Chuck Schumer, and these others within the Democratic Party being complicit with the treason of allowing these people to come in and kill Americans, not only on our own home ground, but as well set up indoctrination stations, build their own government centers on our own ground, and then enter into government through the Democratic Party to take positions, to be able to take positions not only in the higher federal levels, but as well as the state and county levels, where they can take control of our departments of education and indoctrinate that of the American posterity with this foreign totalitarian ideology, and in the same way as what they're doing with their own children over in the totalitarian Islamic states. Any child right now across America is coming home with some form of indoctrination taking place because the Democratic Party has allowed these people through local government, who are committing treason as well, and aiding and assisting and abetting these people, and being able to indoctrinate their totalitarian ideology on the American posterity right through our own public school system. And why are they doing it? All you have to do is check the accounts, the bank accounts of these people on the school boards, these people who are actually in control of the Department of Education and that of the people in control of our public school systems. And you will find and you will see the tracings of the funds being transferred to them from these foreign totalitarian Islamic states. They have been buying state commissioners like crazy through the elections and padding the elections of the people they want in the county commissions. And I've seen it witnessed with my own eyes right in Hernando County among the doctors, padding that of the legislative local county commissions in Hernando County, Florida. Well, I've witnessed this years ago, where I was accused of being a bigot by even that of the Senate positions of Jenny Bramwaite in Hernando County, because I raised issues about these things back in the time when Keith Ellison was being appointed, or he actually won an election and coming into our government. I was called back then. All the way back then in 2006, I was being called a racist and a bigot before most of the majority of people, because I'm aware of these truths and I've been trying to disclose them. But you know what? People don't want to listen. People don't want to listen. I'm presenting evidence beyond reasonable doubt here of what has taken place and what has been taking place. We're going to move forward now and continue on here. I want to touch base on what Hillary Clinton says here again as a reminder. And then we're going to get into the truth of facing the danger of what we've been facing in America, and the true indoctrination that's going on, and the true threat of terrorism that's going on, and the truth of Americans dying Americans dying right here on our own home ground at the hands of the treasonous traitors of our nation within our own government.
Lives Matter movement. How can we make sure that United States today is that we protect the constitutional rights of all groups of people without marginalizing any one community? Specifically, as a mother of 3 young children, as an American Muslim, how can I make sure that this country is the best place on earth to raise my family?
Now, I just want you to know, when you look at this, understand, you can tell that this whole setup right here is a rehearsed setup. Hillary Clinton knew this woman's there. She knew she was going to be called on. She knew this to hold. Everything has been rehearsed. This is rehearsed. And when you look at her face and you look at her face, you can realize this is rehearsed and scripted and being done to the T as they planned it to be.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service in the military.
It's my pleasure.
And one of the...
Mind you, this woman was in Air Force. She was in the American Air Force, and she's a Muslim. And understand that this is all part of the tiaka and the fooling of the American people, of which, as we go forward from here, you're going to understand how this is all being placated out without, Hillary Clinton says thank you for this. Hillary Clinton acknowledges these things. Listen to her and understand how complicit she is in the treason she's committing.
One of the most distressing aspects of this campaign has been the language of Republican candidates, particularly their frontrunner, that insults, demeans, denigrates different people. He has cast a wide net. He started with Mexicans. He's currently on Muslims. But I found it particularly harmful the way that he has talked about Muslims, American Muslims, and Muslims around the world. And I've called him out continuously about that. It's not only shameful and contrary to our values to say that people of a certain religion should never come to this country, or to claim that there are no real people of the Muslim faith who share our values, and to have the kind of dismissive and insulting approach.
When I look at this and I understand she is fully aware and complicit in the treason, she knows what she's doing, and what she's saying is disgraceful. Because it's evident, this is our main problem right here in the United States. We have people who we elect and are running our government for us to be American people that really don't know the history of our own country. They don't know who our enemies are. They don't know and understand the history or the threat of that of long-established totalitarian regimes in this world who have long been declared the enemies of America and the American people for their long-standing of terrorism and harm of which they've afflicted upon humanity, like Islam for the last 1,400 years, as I mentioned, are accountable for the death and the murder of over 350 million people in their 1,400-year trend on their pursuit for world domination in a totalitarian regime. They've killed and murdered over 350 million people, and literally probably near twice that many who they have harmed. And today, they have enslaved under their control hundreds of millions of other people within their totalitarian regimes around the world. And they're all being enslaved and afflicted with harm. Slavery going on within the Islamic State is what we've proven. And she sits up here and tries to take a moral high stand in defending this long-established and declared enemy of the American people. And who are literally right now killing the American people under hers, Barack Obama's, Joe Biden's, Chuck Schumer's, and many other of the Democrats, aiding and assisting them in doing what they're doing and protecting them by that of our own laws and our own legal system of law protective society, of our own police and our own military, using to protect these people and doing what they're doing in the infiltration of our own nation with their goal to overthrow this country. And as you heard from the last lady, to make sure all of America is converted and submits to that of Islam and becomes Muslim. This is their goal, people, and they're not hiding it. We're going to move forward here and listen to this man. Because this guy here is an imam who teaches all around the world and is highly respected, and he breaks down something to the question about what we have been talking about, what's today many Muslims deny, Hillary Clinton denies, Barack Obama denies, the thing of apostasy and Muslims being killed, of which they don't understand that when they're recorded, and its evidence is there, you see, they do these things without realizing that, like, it's different. You see, 100 years ago or 200 years ago, we didn't have a way to record somebody. And they would write things and then they could burn that book and they could say, oh, that's not true. But today, with the evidence of what we have existing on video, of them being caught, and as well with secret things like undercover mosque and where we catch these people, they admit things and then it's too late for them to take it back. But let's listen to what this guy's got to say so you can understand. In this, we're going to understand the true difference between Islam and Christianity of religion and freedom of religion, and the true difference of that of a foreign totalitarian regime where church and state are one, and that of like America where church and state are separate, and we don't allow religion to be a governing factor within our nation. But Islam in church and state is one, and the governing factor of their nation is the constitution of their nation, of which is the Islamic Quran. So let's listen to what this guy's got to say.
Is that, of course, in the West, they do execute people for treason, isn't it? You commit treason, you sell state secrets to the enemy, you will be executed. So the issue of the state and protection of that state is one big enough that you can be killed for. In Islam, religion and the state are one. Islam is not like a religion as the West understands religion, which is a private affair. So the idea for you to be killed about making a private affair, your choice in a private affair, this sounds ludicrous, ridiculous. How? You choose to be this or that, or you change they're going to kill you? No, this is personal. So they have to understand that religion in Islam is not a personal affair alone. Yes, it has a personal element, but it is the state. So when a person leaves Islam publicly, they are challenging that state. So it is like an act of treason. And this is why the law is so severe. And that is for the person who publicly goes out and says, I have left Islam. Islam is this, that, and the other. Yes, that person will be executed.
And he's not lying. So you understand now what he says, right? You understand how he is explaining as an imam, an expert, a scholar in Islam, how church and state in the West is different. He's explaining to us the difference and how we don't even understand, or which many ignorant Americans don't understand this concept. They don't understand the truth of that Islam is a foreign totalitarian government. It's a totalitarian government in which it's created a religion so that they can self-endow that of the governing authority as if they are God. You see, and this is an ancient method of practice that we can see goes back with the pharaohs of Egypt, the kings of Babylon, the emperors of China, and even the monarchies of the kings of the Christian nations, like even with King James and King George III, of who we overthrew and took this nation from, okay, to establish it. They all have a way of totalitarianizing religion into their authority and powers. And this is called the ultimate totalitarianism, is what Islam is, because they've had such success for 1,400 years in endowing and self-proclaiming themselves the authority of God, and indoctrinating the people in their totalitarianism methods, where they can learn nothing but what they're told, to and indoctrinate and brainwash to believe that they are really the authority of God. And this is how they control people and enslave them. So understand, as we move forward here, these right here I'm going to include. This is a list of the wars of Islam and what they've waged on the world in the last 1,400 years, year by year. And I'll include this. As you can see, there is not a world war or event of war that has taken place in the last 1,400 years that Islam has not been involved in. There is not one conflict in all of humanity in the last 1,400 years that does not involve Islam being the instigating factor of it in their pursuit for world domination. This is why they are accountable for now an estimated over 350 million innocent people being killed in the name of Islam in their pursuit of world domination and control to enslave humanity. When we get up to the very end here, America appears in those wars. And there's a reason for it. As we go forward, too, and as we see with Hillary Clinton, she mentioned about thanking that woman for her service. Under Tiaka, they will enter into society like they're doing in Great Britain, France, Germany right now, all around the world. Italy, Greece. They will come in and, like they say, they will play nice under the abrogated teachings of Islam so that they can infiltrate a nation until they build a large enough majority to be able to make a move to try and overthrow that nation or enforce that of their Sharia law. We have seen experiments in where we have allowed the Islamic Muslims into our military, like here, where in 1970 we had Nildil Manik Hassan, who is responsible for injuring more than 30 others. He killed 13 people in our military, turning on our own military after we trained him in our military. These are experimental testings that these people have done, and we've seen these testings take place all the way back this goes back 1970. And we've seen these experimentals taking place here in America. They were also taking place in Iran with the small military Iran had. The Democrats in America were assisting Iran with other democratic democracies around the world on the socialist agenda for pushing that of the king at the time of Iran to be all-inclusive with Muslims as well in his country. And they had a 20% marginal of Muslims that when the Muslims in 1978 invaded and were trying to overthrow Iran, those 20% of Muslims rose up and fought their own military and assisted the Iranian Muslim militants coming in to overthrow the nation. And this is what they're going to do here if we keep allowing them into our military. As we can see the experiments going on. She doesn't mention about that. She thanks this woman for that, but she don't talk about this guy who rose up and killed that of his own American soldiers with him in our own military. It killed 13 of them, injured, and tried to kill 30 others. Okay? We also see this happening right here. This was in the time with the FBI investigating. Listen to this. The FBI is investigating more than 100 suspected Muslim extremists who are part of the U.S. military community. Officials tell the NPR U.S. authorities have increased scrutiny since the 2009 shooting attack at Fort Hood, Texas, that left 13 dead. And charged with the killing is shown here in April 2010 court hearing. Okay, this was an Islamic Muslim who killed another 13 in the Fort Hood killing right here, and that they know of hundreds within our military right now who are Muslims that they know. This is what I'm saying. So understand it's a complicit treason because they know it's happening. They're aware of it, and they're doing nothing to stop it. The government that we're electing and entrusting right now is aiding, assisting, and abetting in the treason and positioning the American people for an onslaught that's going to result in tens of thousands of Americans being killed right here on our own home ground. And they're doing it out of selfish desire for that of their own greed, out of corruption, and being bought by that of foreign interest to be able to do this. And it's going from the federal levels all the way down to the state level, county level, city and local town levels. And where we have local government all the way up to the highest levels of government being bought off and complicitly committing treason, knowingly, without a damn concern for our children, our grandchildren, or us, the American people, and that there's a potential onslaught. Because you know what? They feel they're safe with all their millions of dollars. They're gonna, and their complicitness, that they're going to be protected in it. They're not going to be harmed. Their families are going to be okay. They don't give a damn about us, and we better wake up and realize this reality because it's coming. Let's take a quick listen to this right here. This is how the Founding Fathers fought for the right of Muslims. This is a lady here who speaks about the Founding Fathers, and they're trying to, again, indoctrinate Americans and that of our American posterity to think that Islam is a part of America and the fiber, as Obama puts it, the fiber of America, which when we get to after this point here, you're going to realize the truth of what I'm saying.
In North Africa and the Ottomans. And while a lot of the literature that Americans absorbed, and this would include Thomas Jefferson and other founders, was negative about Islam, there was a strain in Europe that Jefferson was also heir to, and that was a view that Muslims could be future citizens. Jefferson read in 1776 John Locke's famous letter on toleration, in which Locke said that neither pagan...
The important thing to remember, she says 1776.
...nor Mohammedan, meaning Muslim, nor Jew, ought to be excluded from the civil rights of the Commonwealth because of his religion. And he copied those words down in 1776, a few months after penning the Declaration of Independence.
Now, this woman is trying to say, she's repeating the rhetoric of that of Barack Obama, who said these same things. Pretty much what she's doing is she's been indoctrinated by Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and the Democratic Party to believe these things. And her ignorance does not go back to recognize the truth that Thomas Jefferson at the time really did not know anything about Islam. And yeah, he did. She's right. He said these things. But he was also questioned by George Washington about those things. And after George Washington was far more wiser than Thomas Jefferson, informed, and we have letters of reference to this and documents within our federal archives that she doesn't want to bring up or mention, and neither does Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton, that in those letters, George Washington himself informs Thomas Jefferson he needs to become more aware of the truth, okay, and that his ignorance can get us killed, pretty much. And as we progress forward now, we're going to move a little bit forward here. And again, I want to speak on this here. This is
over a period of almost 1,400 years.
This was on, George Washington and the Barbary Coast Pirates. Now, understand, George Washington had wisdom because upon our nation being founded, the Muslims started to attack our ships abroad and kidnap our people and enslave them. And we would come to realize, George Washington and everybody was kind of like, look, we did nothing to these people. Why are they attacking us? We would become aware in our studies, and even with George Washington, he would tell Jefferson at the time, you need to get real and understand what's going on. But we're going to look ahead and find out what happened from the due diligence. Jefferson, like here we see here, Jefferson versus the Muslims. Our first war is an independent nation. Following the rivalry of what took place where we were extorted under George Washington by them under what they call their, it was called a jizya tax, and where all non-Muslim nations had to submit to the authority of the Muslims and pay a tax if they wanted to exist on the earth without being waged war on. You were blackmailed, extorted, and allowed, but you were only allowed this for a certain amount of time. You see, people don't understand that the jizya tax is only a temporary allowance, where it gives you time to submit, face reality that you are submitting to Islam, and then accept Islam and convert to being under the rule of Islam, or they will wage war on you. And we would come to understand this because George Washington paid the jizya because we didn't have a military or a navy yet big enough to be able to fight these people off and prevent it. And it was hurting us greatly, but we didn't have a navy yet big enough to handle this. And we just got over the Revolutionary War with Great Britain, so we were very diminished in resources. So we had no choice. We paid off the jizya to buy ourselves time to be able to prepare to eventually deal and address this issue. Of what's the issue would get addressed under Thomas Jefferson, who this woman's trying to claim was the friend of Islam and wanted Islam. Thomas Jefferson led the first war against the totalitarian Islamic Muslims for doing what they did under George Washington. He was the guy who commissioned out of the Navy. Our Marines were founded, and our Navy was founded under the expedition of our first war as an independent nation with that of the totalitarian Islamic Muslims, because they were capturing and enslaving our people, trying to extort us and force us under the rule of that of totalitarian Islam, which we resisted. Now, I'm going to read you here, was a letter in the time, this was in the time of, at the time, 1786, so a little while after 1776, where that woman was talking about. This is from George Washington to Lafayette, August 15, 1786. And it was a letter in reference to that of what was taking place with the Islamic Muslims attacking American ships, our inability to have the ability to fight them at this time, and Washington's not understanding why such a mighty power like Great Britain would be paying this jizya, or France would be paying this jizya, and to avoid with these people. And in the end here, he comes down to conclude, he says, but let me ask you, Mr. Marcuse, in such an enlightened, in such a liberal age, how is it possible the great maritime powers of Europe should submit to pay an annual tribute to the little particle states of Barbary, the Muslims? Would to the heavens we had a navy able to reform those enemies to mankind, or crush them into non-existence. This is what George Washington, when you hear Hillary Clinton say there was Muslims during the time of George Washington, and you hear this woman talking about Thomas Jefferson, this is what our founders really thought. And George Washington declared them the enemies of mankind. Not just America, the enemies of mankind. George Washington understood the true tenements of the totalitarianism regime of what was Islam. Because mind you, at this point here, we're looking at already becoming the United States. We have the Federalist Papers, we have John Adams, Thomas Jefferson doing research on the rise and falls of many nations and the governments and whatever, and we're starting to get to the point where we've been drafting up to come up with our own United States Constitution, okay, which happens in 1789. And this is during the time of, like I said, 1786, 3 years before we even have our own Constitution. Now, by the time that we see here in 1786, where he sends Thomas Jefferson to learn truly about what's going on, Jefferson goes over and finds out that, he gets a Quran that's interpreted into English so he can read it. They start doing the study. George Washington gets him an ambassador over there, where him and John Jay go, and they start to, American Commission to John Jay, 28, right, just commissioners to John Jay, March 28, 1786. Okay, they go over and they get, and Thomas Jefferson's doing research. The ambassador had answered to us what it was found on the laws of their prophet, what it is written in their Quran, that all nations who should not have acknowledged their authority were sinners, that it was their right and duty to make war upon them wherever they could be found, and to make slaves of all they could take as prisoners, and that every Muslim who should be slain in battle was sure to go to paradise. So understand, this is what we have to realize. This was founded and understood. Thomas Jefferson knew and declared them the enemies of the United States and the American people. Okay? They were known and declared. James Madison would lead okay, this is the first Barbary War by Thomas Jefferson. We would have the second Barbary War in 1815. Now, mind you, at this time, we're the United States. The Constitution is drafted in 1789. So we have our Constitution, we have our establishment. The second war was by James Madison, was led in 1812, starting during the British War of 1812. After that, we wound up going into the conflict in 1850, the second war with the Islamic Muslims. So, I mean, this is what I'm trying to say. This is the second war. There's writings about James Madison condemned them too to be the enemies of the United States. Now, I'm going to go and look at something else which we have here in reference to James Madison. I want to just show how the Muslims with James Madison addressed the United States. Because the question is, why was it? Well, it was because we were a Christian-founded nation. Our United States Constitution is ratified in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. We have and in truth, the First Amendment protects that of the right of religion, but only of those religions which were established at the time of the Constitution in 1789, being ratified in the United States of America. And under that time of when it was ratified, the only two establishments of religion in America was that of the synagogues of the Jews and the Christian Church of Christianity. Because the British kings would not allow anything but those two forms of religion anyway, because they were Christian-founded nations. And when we were under British rule, British was a Christian-founded authority. Only Christianity was allowed. So those tenements as well is what would only be the establishment in America. And by this time too, as well, by the time of our Constitution, we already knew that the Muslims from George Washington in the first attacks under George Washington were the enemies of the United States. They were declared by George Washington the enemies of the United States and the American people. They were declared by John Adams to be the enemies of the United States and the American people. They were declared by Thomas Jefferson, and they were declared pretty much the first four administrations, James Madison as well, all declared them the enemies of the United States of America and the American people. There was no Muslims in America until 1934. Legally, anyway. Now, after the first two wars with the Barbary Wars, the one of 1801 and then again in 1815, in the turn of the century coming into the 19th century, we would face the first world war. Because in this war is where the totalitarian Islamic Muslims waged world war jihad. And in defense of our allies, we never declared war on anyone in World War I. In World War I, I'm off, so I'm here from where I'm at. Okay, so I got to get this right. Okay, so in World War I, we would face the Muslims again, fighting in defense of our allies. Okay, and oh, I just shrunk the wrong thing here. Hold on. Give me 1 second, people. I got to straighten this out. Okay, here we go. So now when we're hitting World War I time, it was the Ottoman Muslim Empire who declared a jihad on the world. And we had to fight in defense of that of our allies like Australia at this time. Now, I'm just going to go through this because it's getting to be a long video, but progression forward was the Ottoman Empire's declared holy war on the world. And that was World War I in 1914. Okay? So as we progress even forward more, understand I'm just trying to show you how long they were declared enemies. We get to World War II. World War II was the same alliances of what took place in World War I. But this time it rose up under Germany's Nazis at the time and the fascists of what would be Mussolini and what have you with Italy at the time in this world coalition of, again, an attempt for world domination and control. But the funny thing about it is most people aren't aware that that's right, the relation between Nazi Germany and the Arab world. The Islamic Muslims, all 6 provinces then of the Islamic states at that time that existed during World War II, were members of the Nazi Party. They had ranks. Hitler had ranks of Islamic Muslims in the Nazi ranks. And here you can see Hitler right here speaking with Administrator al-Husseini and Adolf Hitler in 1941. There was an alliance. The Muslims were financing the majority of the war, being Hitler really didn't have the money for that war because he bankrupted Germany, turning it into a socialist state. The Muslims were financing the majority of that war. Hitler was doing a lot of favors for them, like killing the Jews. They're long-established world enemies for 1,400 years. The Muslims have claimed the Jews to be their world enemies. Most people try to say that Hitler was doing this because he was insane, he had syphilis, blah, blah, blah. Historians are fools if they don't recognize the truth of the Islamic relations. Do you know this very day that the only still existing Islamic State, today, the only still existing totalitarian Nazi regimes are the Islamic Muslims. They have never renounced their Nazism, in their support of being a Nazi party members. They were Nazi party members. They're still the only existing Nazi members today that are still adherent to that of the goal of world domination and control through the Nazism of that of the practice during World War II. It goes on, people, because you know what? You had the Vietnam War, right? Most people would say, well, what does Vietnam have to do? Well, if those who remember Ali defending Vietnam, refusing to fight in Vietnam, and there was a reason for it. Secretly, among the secrets of the Muslims, they know why that reason is, and that reason falls into that of what is known as the Shem Muslims of Vietnam. The Shem Muslims of Vietnam were the majority of the push for the Vietnam War that was dividing Vietnam because they were pushing for the communism of that of what was founded under World War II with Nazism, of which was the branch off of what was started with the World War I issue, of which has been going on for the last 1,400 years in the pursuit for world domination under the Islamic Muslims. Understand they have been involved. Following this event here, we would face the Iranian Revolution. And then, actually not yet. First we would face the Iraqi wars. Okay, and where we were at war, America, we were at war with Iraq and Iran at the same time in the early 70s. We would go on to reach the Iran-Contra affairs, which took place in 1980s and 1979. This is leading into the overthrow of Iran. We would face the War of Desert Storm with the Islamic Muslims. We would face the wars of 1993 and the first World Trade Center attack by Osama bin Laden, which would lead then up to the next World Trade Center attack where they actually succeeded and killed near 3,000 Americans for the first time in recorded history, in the history of the United States, unprecedented. Americans killed by a foreign known and declared enemy, the Islamic Muslims, right here on our own home ground, with an attack right here for the first time in American history by a foreign known and declared enemy attacking us on our own home ground, the Islamic Muslims, when they took down the Twin Towers. We would go after the Twin Towers. We would see the war in Iraq begins. And then we see the first Muslims elected to Congress. This is insane. This is insane. This is what I'm talking about. Keith Ellison, first Muslim elected to Congress. Right? After we get attacked by the Muslims, the Democrats open up the platform because the money flow. Hundreds of millions of dollars flowing in from Arabia and Iran, padding the accounts of these Democrats and as well Republicans. George Bush Sr., all the way back when we go back into the late 1970s and 80s with the oil industry. And even right here around the time of where we're talking in 2003, George Bush Sr. and Jr. involved with that of Dick Cheney in the Iraqi wars with the Muslims, made a fortune, hundreds of millions of dollars, off of a little stock scam they were running with a company called Boots and Coats, a well capping company, which in truth, to be honest with you, FBI records show and investigations from military investigations show that it might not even have been. And the reason they killed they killed Hussein of Iraq was because he knew the truth. They tried to, and he kept it for a while. He kept that secret for a while, but you know what? He was going to expose them, that it was them. It was they had our own military guys light the oil wells on fire so that they could run. The contracted company was a company called Boots and Coats by Dick Cheney. It was a company that went and dwindled down to a penny stock. George Bush Sr. and the Bush family and Dick Cheney, they had millions of dollars invested in this company they were at fault of losing, and they figured out a scam way by the proxy war with Iraq and where they can make their money back. What they would do is have the oil wells lit on fire, and they would give the contract to terminate those fires and cap those wells to their own company that was established by Dick Cheney with George Bush Sr. while George Bush Jr. was president. And then that contract would take that stock from a penny stock, which you can look back in the history, from a penny stock running all the way up to like $25, $30 a share. And they dumped millions of shares on the public. Millions of shares. So they were dumping every millions of shares like $23, $30 million. And they were dumping millions and millions of shares onto the public until the situation was under control, and then it was announced that, you know what, that company really was going to make as much money, and boom, it went from $25, $30 a share right down to pennies again a share. This is what happened. They made hundreds of millions of dollars off this. I'm telling you, these people were treasonous scumbags, traitors to this nation, and George Bush knows it. George Bush Jr. knows it. Dick Cheney knows it. The Democrats know it. They all profited in these things. They were all taking a role in playing these scams, and when they realized the millions they could make like this doing this stuff, they continued on doing it. This led into, as well now, we get up to after the first Muslim election, we get here a known Islamic sympathizer Barack Obama out of nowhere. This guy was sold off as American apple pie. They pitched this guy off to the public as being an interracial child of that of a white and black couple here in America, a Harvard graduate, a lawyer out of Chicago. They made this guy sound like apple pie. And you know what? That all sounds great. And if it was true, it would have been great apple pie. It would have been true American apple pie. The only problem was this guy was raised a Muslim. His real father was a Muslim. His stepfather was a Muslim. He was raised under Muslim tenements, okay? And he was never truly an American. He was raised in Indonesia. Then he came to live with his grandparents who were in Hawaii. And while he was in Hawaii, he was being indoctrinated under communism because both his grandparents were open and admitted communists, okay? By the time he came to Chicago, he claims he converted from Islam to Christianity under a church he joined in Chicago, which later he had to separate from because the apple pie started falling apart and the truth started coming out. The preacher that he was going to church with at that time was great friends with Farrakhan of the Nation of Islam. All these things should be starting to tie together for people who have been following the story all the way up till now. So he converts to Christianity, he claims. Then he has to separate from that church. So now he's literally now a kafar, apostate of Islam, right? This is what but we all know during his administration how he pushed for Islam in America. After his election, we faced the Boston Marathon bombing by the Islamic Muslims, where killing 3 people and injuring hundreds of others. This took place, right, in 2010. Then we go on, we see here the attack from the Queen Hatchet attack by the Muslim, hatcheting people apart over in Islam, the Muslims attacking. Because at this point, with Obama in, and not under the Democratic administration with Hillary Clinton, they're literally now importing in immigrants from Somalia, Iraq, Iran, you name it. Anybody wants to come, they're importing Muslims into our country like crazy. These Muslims are coming to commit jihad. They admitted they're coming to commit jihad because, mind you, in 2010, there was literally Arabia, Tehran, Iran, Iraq, all the Islamic provinces at that time, Hungary, all the Hungarian of the Islamic Muslims, all the Muslims declared jihad on America because the Supreme Court went and played God and made legal same-sex marriages, which is an abomination under Islam and cause for them to overthrow the nation of anybody because they consider now you're playing God. And that's exactly what our Supreme Court tried to do in 2010, play God. The idiocy, we lost all integrity with our Supreme Court at that time. But then we had the Queen Hatchet happen here. We're going to go on. And more. These are all American attacks right here in America. The Curtis Colwell Center attack that took place in 2015. This right here was another one. The FBI was monitoring 2 attacks for years, and undercover agents was right behind them when the first shots were fired. This right here, I'll include links to all this stuff here. Then we get on, we keep going on, we move on. We got the Chattanooga shooting that took place by the Islamic Muslims, where they, right here, that shooting took place at a Marine recruiter, and the police officers were wounded. Y'all put all these stories here. We had that incident going on. And I'm just putting here, this is unprecedented, first time ever that we had Muslims being imported in by our own government, given citizenship by our own government, aided and assisted and protected by our own government, and as they're coming in, they're killing Americans on our own home ground. So understand that by the end of this, we're estimated up over near 5,000 Americans killed. Okay, we have the Orlando nightclub shooting that takes place. 50 in one night. Kids live in Orlando. I live in Florida. That's where it took place, in Orlando. The Muslim went in and shot and killed 49 kids and wounded many more. I mean, it's just incredible. In New Jersey in 2016, we had the New Jersey bombing and the killing of Americans by the Muslims. Then again, we had the Ohio State University attack by the Muslims. Then again, we had the New York City truck attack, the same thing like the Ohio State, driving over herds of people, Americans on the sidewalks. Then we had again, this right here shows the list of, not just so you understand, that the jihad is, again, we're in the phases of World War III, people. They did this in World War I, they did it in World War II. It's been going on for 1,400 years. And as I said, when we look back and we look at the events of here, understand the long history. This starts out right here in 624 AD. And it goes through. These are all the way along here is a list of all the Islamic wars that the Muslims have waged on humanity. And there is not a war since Islam has risen that Islam isn't involved in the world right now. And near every issue that the world is facing today and has faced in the last 1,400 years is from Islamic Muslim aggression in their pursuit for world domination to overthrow and force the world to submit to Islam under their Islamic rule and control, and to enslave the entire of all humanity under their Islamic regime. This is a fact, people, we need to wake up to and realize. Look at this list. This goes on to the 12th century, the 13th century, the 14th century, the 15th century, 16th century, 17th century, 18th century, 19th century, until it gets right up into the very attacks we're talking about right now on America are listed in the final of the 20th century here. I mean, this is just unreal, and that no one is seeing this and paying attention. We look here and we see, as what we see here, what's going on where we left off right here. So now we see here, we also have right here the sentence to the consecutive life terms. This was a guy, of the Muslims, they had what was known as a Coptic Christian church in New Jersey. And Muslims were learning about the truth up there. And these were actually Somalian, I believe, and one of them was Qatar. Islamic Muslims. They had learned about the truth of the lies of Islam, and they converted to be Coptic Christians. Well, the other Muslims weren't going to have that, so they literally captured these men and killed them, decapitated them, cut their heads off, cut their hands and feet off, buried their hands, feet, and heads in another place, their bodies in another, but they were discovered. This is when the guy was sentenced right here out of New Jersey, the guy who killed them and did this. He's one of a gang of members who were all complicit with this going on. He got sentenced to consecutive life terms for shooting 2 men in New Jersey City, decapitating them and burying them in Atlantic County. You see, this another Muslim attack that was going on. We also have this guy here, the other cases they don't talk about, which involves hundreds that were taking place across our country in different places where these Muslims were being displaced all around the nation, to include that of Nation of Islam Muslims, as well as Somalia Muslims, Iraqi Muslims, many other Muslims from different countries that the Democrats were giving citizenship to, like Willy Wonka handing out golden bars. Okay, they were bringing them in because, money. The money. The more that they would allow in from Arabia, Tehran, Iraq, whatever, Somalia, the more that the Muslims over there would pad their election campaigns, buy their books, pad their money, hundreds of millions of dollars like Hillary Clinton Foundation, money, hundreds of millions of dollars flowing into that foundation from Arabia, all so that they would keep handing out citizenship and bringing in. And the more these Muslims were coming in, the more Americans were getting killed right here on our own home ground. And then as we've seen on the news, when these things would take place, Hillary Clinton and other Democrats would go on the news and defend these people if they wanted that money to continue flowing into their accounts. And they did it. They were very complicit in the treason, very complicit in aiding and assisting these Muslims and covering it up and continuing to go forward and be able to use the Democratic platform to infiltrate that of our schools, our local departments of education, our local county commissions, to be able to regulate that of local ordinances, local county laws, that of state laws, and it's been going on, and it's at a point right now, it's beyond anywhere it should have ever been allowed, and this government is still very complicit, aiding and assisting in treason and aiding and assisting of long established, known and declared Americans. And right now, tens of thousands of more Americans' lives are directly at threat right now, and the resulting forward effects of this, if we don't stop it now, could result in millions of American lives if we don't stop this and get it under control and end it right now. Our own government is literally the cause behind all that I'm talking about, and we have to face this reality. Here you have Muslims stoning Christians in Dearborn, Michigan. Okay, unprecedented that we would see these things happening in America. I don't know how aware people are of these events, but I'm very aware of them because I'm concerned for my grandchildren's safety in the future. I'm concerned for all Americans' posterity in the future because these events are happening right now around America, and our own social media, our own news outlets, and our own government are trying to hide and bury the facts of these truths I'm trying to tell you, and it's happening. Right now in America, you have here, you have here, free speech case against police, right? It says here, preacher stoned by Muslims when free speech case in police. Now before that, we had this here, Muslims stoning Christian in Michigan, not quite. You see, this is the point I'm trying to make. Not quite. The social media, the news outlets are being paid by foreign interests to debunk a lot of things. Now, they debunked that this was not true, that Christians weren't being stoned in Dearborn, that this was a lie. Now, the media and the news outlets printed that story, but then guess what happened? The preacher stoned by Muslims, won free speech case against police in Dearborn, Michigan. You see, they don't want to tell you about that part. See, if you don't follow through with the story today with the internet and the way things are going with texting and what have you, everybody's so short memory and quick-lived and short, brief note. Nobody follows up with things. But I'm trying to show you the facts, people. The facts are everybody is pitching us a truth. That is lies. And they don't want us looking at the facts. Like Joe Biden said, they choose truth over facts because you know what? They don't want you looking. If you look at the facts, you're going to realize you've been being lied to. And the lies are going to come to light. And the truth is going to come to light. And you're going to realize what I'm telling you is the damn truth. I'm not lying to you. We need to wake up and realize somebody needs to step forward and start bringing charges against the United States government and those who are complicit in the treason taking place right now. Because they are accountable for thousands right now of American lives that have been murdered right here on our own home ground. And then right now at risk is tens of thousands of more American lives. And literally leading into that of millions if we don't get this under control. Because the current administration right now is positioning America to be put into a position where tens of thousands of Americans more will be murdered right here on our own home ground, which could domino into an effect that will lead into literally millions of Americans being murdered here and abroad. We have to get control of this situation now. Here we have a Muslim who is a congresswoman. Okay, this woman nearly speaks out weekly. She has been like here. Minnesota Congresswoman ignites debate on Israel and anti-Semitism. Israel has been our longest-standing ally, and you heard all the way through this whole thing how the Jews are their enemies. Now we have allowed. This is the thing that I don't understand. Why people don't understand. You have all right here, Muslim American activist, right? She's here. Defiance resonates with Muslim American activists because of her speech against the Jews and Christians now in America. Okay. This right here I want to show you. If you want to know, this is something I want to put a point to. We're just coming into summer right now, right? We're going to have school break. Well, we ain't going to have with the COVID. Everything's all debunked right now in this nation anyway with the scamdemic of the whole COVID thing, COVID-demic, scamdemic, right? That's going on. But if it was normal circumstance, we'd be sending our kids off to summer camp. I want to show you what summer camp's like in the Islamic states and what they train their children like. And understand that what you're about to see and what they're being trained and who they're told to kill is the kafar. And that's kafar in everywhere in the world. People in Britain, France, Germany, America, anybody that's not in a Muslim-controlled nation is kafar. And this is what their children are going to be learning this summer. While our children are learning to light a fire, cook marshmallows, camp, fish, this is what the Muslims are teaching their children.
Virtually none of it. It's Islamic State propaganda for sure. It shows young boys being trained to fight. But more importantly, it explains why these are not just errant boys. In the video, they hunt down and kill prisoners for real. They've been brainwashed and they are deadly. The question is, will they always be? Because in the chaos of the Mosul battle, many of them are on the loose. Sky News has been given extremely rare access to some of those who have been caught or are suspects. Some were identified in the sprawling refugee camps dotted across northern Iraq and turned in. A dozen or so share a cell. They're well treated and spend their time praying and trying to learn English. That's an English dictionary. Their stories are similar. Reluctant to join Islamic State, they're groomed by IS members to take up the calling of jihad and ultimately martyrdom. Mahmoud is 12. He admits to being a member. His grooming took 6 to 7 months.
شوفوا أنا بتلبسون على كل شيء شلون يروح يطق الانتحار شلون يزرعون العبوات شلون يفسخون السلاح شلون الإبراهيم مادتها وين تضربها تنفجر شلون وين.
So you understand, they're training these children, and the mothers over there are so brainwashed of the Islamic Muslim women that they're allowing for their children to be indoctrinated this way and brainwashed, to strap bombs on themselves and go into places to kill the kafar, and to upset and cause terrorism, to try and scare people and force them to convert to Islam within different nations. They plan on immigrating through different nations, like right now we have this big caravan that's sitting at the Mexican border, of which we know among that caravan may be many of these here Muslims who are looking to come into our country, who have been trained, indoctrinated, and planned for this whole migration to get into here to do the very things. We had bases that were raised where militant training groups are in America right now, spread out among the Muslims with all the communities they have, where they literally have these kind of training camps taking place right here in America. They're called jihad fortified no-go zones in America. They believe this in America. And nobody's paying attention to this, what is happening. As we move forward here, I want you to pay attention to what this kid says to people coming through who are considered to be the kafar.
A young boy asks us to repent our sins, and then
he says, we are going to kill you by slaughtering you. We are going to slaughter you.
And how do you heal a mind like that?
You see this? This is what these are children, what they're learning. And this right here is their summer camp. What you're going to see, this happens in all the Islamic states. This is their summer camp compared to our summer camp. And Americans should be wide awake to this and understand that what they're doing is and what we should be doing. We should be as we were told to be with our Second Amendment, a nation of militia. But right now the Democrats and the Democratic administration is trying to disarm the American people. And if we allow to be disarmed, our people, and we lose our ability to defend our nation at our home ground, while we're importing in these people, we are in trouble.
Their enemy is very close, just a few hundred meters away at the border. There's every chance they're watching. So the tutors at this summer camp like to keep their faces covered.
We don't want war, but if it is forced upon us, then we are ready. We are training the next generation of fighters who want to protect their homeland.
The camp is run by Hamas, the militant group which governs Gaza. Their hardware is on display, over and underground.
One of the reasons the last war went on as long as it did was that Israel was trying to destroy the network of attack tunnels that built from Gaza straight here.
Of their training program, cadets rehearse a cross-border raid to kidnap Israeli soldiers. It's a threat which Israel takes seriously. Its army says it's destroyed several tunnels so far this year. And on the Israeli side of...
So I hope you people are paying attention to realize these are just children. I'm just trying to get through this to wake you up, to understand. This right here is another training video of little kids. Imagine what our military has to do when they have to face these children. Realizing that these children are not playing around, they'll shoot and kill somebody. Because they're indoctrinated from the time they're 6 years old up with this. And this is what's going on. This is no life for any human. But this is the reality we're facing. And this is what's going on. And has been going on for 1,400 years with this totalitarian regime. You hear what they're saying? And these are all because this is all indoctrinated in them from the Quran. This is all related to Islam. All branches and sects of Islam, as you heard from the Muslims themselves, who grew up in this, they're telling you the truth. All sects is all the same. I've been told this, like I said, I lived among a majority Muslim population for near 2 years. I know. That's no lie, it's a fact. They laugh at the idiocy of people and how easy Americans are deceived and fooled out of their ignorance in relation to how easy it is for them to infiltrate and harm Americans on our own home nation ground right now. It's just ridiculous what we're allowing to happen. But it's happening.
Their ethos is that with the election of Donald Trump, they believe that their end times prophecies that they believe in are...
This is about what we're facing right now with Muslims in America.
Yes. Well, what do they say amongst themselves that they're going to do with these weapons? It depends on who they're talking to, because sometimes they'll lie to their own members. So it's a significant number of people who are...
This is right now is about what I was just saying recently. The Islamic training camps right here in America, being that the Democrats are allowing them to immigrate and giving them citizenship. When they get citizenship, they have the right to keep and bear arms, right? The Democrats right now want to strip that of Americans of their arms, but they're not saying nothing while they're doing it. The Muslims are arming up like crazy on these compounds across America. They are arming up like crazy. Our FBI is aware of this, our CIA is aware of this, and of course all of the administration of the Congress are aware of this, and the Democratic and the Republican Party are aware of these events. Our intelligence is telling us these people are arming up, and they're not arming up for deer hunting. They're not arming up for a protection of America, because their loyalty, we know where their loyalty lies. Their loyalty lies to the Quran, which is their constitution, not the United States Constitution. Their goal and their ideology of indoctrination is to overthrow and destroy this country, to kill all the kuffar. This is a fact, undeniable. It's been that way for 1,400 years. As I said, there exists a history of 350 million people killed in the name of Islam. It is not going to change now. It is not changing now. And there is no such thing as radical or moderate Muslim. They're all the same. They all read the same Quran. They all follow the same belief and traditions. They all swear their allegiance to the very same thing. This is a reality we all have to wake up to.
Right. You've got people inside these compounds? We do. We have a significant number of people who are operating not just inside the compounds, but also among those that are living outside the compounds. It's a group called Muslims of America. They used to be known as Jamaat al-Fukra, but then they carried out a bunch of terrorist attacks and decided to drop the name. It ultimately culminated in one of the camps being shut down in 1992 in Colorado. The rest of the infrastructure remained, including these same villages that you've been talking about.
Now, they're accumulating weapons, assault rifles, explosives.
Yes.
What do they say amongst themselves that they're going to do with these weapons?
It depends on who they're talking to, because sometimes they'll lie to their own members. So in some cases, they'll say, this is for self-defense, which is also sometimes how you describe jihad. Sometimes it's more blatantly referred to as jihad. But this arming and this type of training that has been going on, and we've got video of some of the training going on at their headquarters called Islamburg in New York State, has been going on since the beginning. What the breaking news is that we heard from multiple sources, and they provided information to substantiate this, is that with the election of Donald Trump, they believe that their end times prophecies that they believe in are now being fulfilled. Donald Trump is part of a satanic Jewish conspiracy, and they are preparing for the camps to be raided and to fight back.
What is the response of law enforcement, who I presume you've made aware of this?
Well, most of them are in shock because most don't know that the group even exists. Everything is about Al-Qaeda and ISIS. It does not appear that in most cases the FBI is sharing information on the local level. And so I educate law enforcement across the country. Most of the time they don't know about this, or they've heard a little bit. And so we've accumulated thousands and thousands of documents to help law enforcement with this. And just about an hour ago, we opened up a new website called fuprafiles.com, where people can learn more and look at our declassified documents about the group.
Now, Ryan, you can hold these weapons. You can have these weapons.
Right.
And if you've got a permit, you can have these weapons. And the FBI or law enforcement cannot go up to the compound and say, we're just checking. Here's a search warrant. We're just checking. Law enforcement cannot do that.
Right.
So what are they going to do?
Well, they've engaged in a lot of criminal activity, and again, a terrorist history. So you can make the argument that there's some level of probable cause here because drug trafficking, massive charter school scams, all sorts of things to raise millions of dollars that then goes back to their leadership in Pakistan. Their leader, Sheikh Jilani, is the man that Daniel Pearl, Wall Street Journal reporter, was going to interview when he was abducted and killed. And so there's a section on our new website going over that incident because I'm not convinced that Sheikh Jilani wasn't involved in that.
Your position...
So as you see right here, people, what I'm telling you is the truth, and it's self-evident. Our government is, like he says, the FBI is not sharing. Now, I just want to show you, this is, you can't really see it. I can't show you. I have graphic things of things that I have been sent to me from guys, military, the whole shebang, of real actual events, which I can't show because then my video would get banned. But we can show what is covered up and is shown here. This is the actual way that it is conducted in the Islamic States. When I say these people are still back 1,400 years ago and still practicing that, understand this is modern, of course, as you can see. This was in 2015 of a woman who is being stoned to death over in Arabia. For adultery. I'm sorry, it was Afghanistan, a small village in Afghanistan. Now, as we move forward here, this here is an actual beheading that takes place in public squares where they're killing a woman, cutting off her head in public.
Out her innocence. This amateur video appeared online in January this year. The woman was accused of murdering a family member, something she repeatedly denies in the moments before her death. The highly secretive kingdom has long been plagued with accusations of brutality in its justice system. Now a report from human rights group Reprieve, exclusively seen by Channel 4 News, documents the scale of the abuse. It confirms at least 171 people are currently facing execution in Saudi Arabia. Of those, 72% received their sentence for alleged non-violent crimes, and the execution methods include beheading, crucifixion, and stoning.
So you understand, this is the barbaricism that takes place, and that these people are still back, like I said, and they're indoctrinated with this ancient ideology. And the reason why they still keep these barbaric, because that's what the Quran tells them to do. This is how the Quran says. They stick to and it's not changing. Hasn't changed in 1,400 years, not going to change, people. Okay? And we have to wake up to realize the true danger. Because like I said, right now we're up over 5,000 Americans killed right here on American home ground. First time unprecedented in American history. This has happened within the last 20 years. Near 5,000 Americans killed right here on American home ground by a known and long-established declared enemy of the United States of America and the American people, being aided and assisted by that of our own American government, members of that for the majority of the Democratic Party, with complicity out of ignorance and ignoring that of the Republican Party, of our own elected officials who are turning a blind eye to these facts. And as you've seen by some of the evidence recently, the FBI is aware of this, CIA is aware of this, our military is aware of this, higher secret intelligence is aware of this, but they are not disclosing nothing. And the reasons to why, well, that corruption, that bribery, that millions and millions of dollars obviously is going wide around the country. Because the one thing these people don't care about is money. And the one thing it is apparent that of our corrupt, disgraceful, treasonous government does care about is money. And just like the ancient time of the senates of ancient Greece, our government is obviously for sale and selling us out. And they're selling us out within all departments, within all levels of everything that is supposed to be there to protect us. They're selling us out. So, I mean, we have to wake up and face this reality, people. This right here, I want to show you something too. The level of inhumanity with them. This was a kid who is captured, who is supposedly considered an enemy of the Islamic Muslims. He's a child. I think he's like 8 years old. They literally cut the kid's head off. In the name of what you can hear them screaming, Allah Akbar. This is in Islam. That little kid, they killed. They cut his head off. This is how sick this ideology is. And so I'm just saying, this is where we're going to conclude. I know this has been a long video. I think I presented enough evidence for everybody to consider. And when we look at this and we look at the facts of what we say here, when you consider everything I've just said, and then you listen to this.
Muslim, we should get this done. Let's be clear, though. Islam is not our adversary. Muslims are peaceful and tolerant people and have nothing whatsoever to do with terrorism.
If you don't realize by now, that is a blatant lie by a woman who knows for a damn fact that all world terrorism right now taking place, all the world around us, you see all these wars? You see all this. These are the wars of Islam, attacking the world, and all nations in the world, of every nation, and every rising and falling of every nation, state, and community in the world in the last 1,400 years has been under terrorist attack and war by that of the nations of Islam. And this woman knows this. She is such a liar and so complicit in the treason and aiding and assisting of these enemies. It is disgraceful that this woman is still allowed to roam freely in the United States. Not to mention the thousands of Americans that her, and as well the complicit Democrats within her and the Republicans of our entrusted government, are all complicit with this. We have a serious problem in America we need to face. And we need to face that reality very soon and very quick, because it's coming. The reality is coming. If we don't deal with this, it's going to eventually escalate up into tens of thousands of more of Americans being killed right here on American home ground. And the longer we sit and we wait and we don't take our place as Americans, the higher that number is going to rise and possibly get into the potentials of millions. And at some point, either it's going to trigger the American people to take their place and take back control of their nation and their government and hold these people accountable, or we're going to have to face the reality like Iran and go to our knees and surrender. Because if we allow them to disarm the American people, we're going to be the next Iran. That's for sure. With that said, I'm going to end this video. It's been a very long video. I hope everybody enjoyed the video and takes the time to do the due diligence and the research. Like I say, below in the information below in the description is the links to everything that you've seen here. Anyone has any questions or information, you can comment in the box below. I ask that everyone share this video wide and far, and do your own talk with your friends of Americans. Let's start waking up American people. Let's get awake, people, because we have to address this issue. Thank you to all who took the time to watch this very long and informative video. And like I said, if you have any questions, comment below. You have anything you want to share, comment it below. And share this video, get the information out. Let's start a debate on this. Let's start talking about it. Thank you all again for watching my video. Have a great day.